Nade, boom, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everybody. Here we are in Budapest Temple, in front of Dayanitai Vijay Gauranga.
Hare Krishna mindenkinek, itt vagyunk a budapesti templomban Dayanitai Vijay Gaurangával.
And it is Saturday night.
És most szombat este van.
We had a sort of a schedule mix-up.
Itt az időbeosztás kicsit keveredett.
I thought there was going to be a program today that's actually tomorrow.
Azt gondoltam, hogy ma lesz egy program, ami igazából holnap lesz.
So I can't give this lecture tomorrow, so I'm giving it today.
Úgyhogy ezt a leckét nem tudom holnap tartani, és emiatt ma tartom.
So what you're seeing is a video recording.
Szóval amit láthattok, az egy videófelvétel.
But well, if you forget what I just said, you won't know the difference.
De hogyha elfelejted, amit mondtam, akkor nem fogod észrevenni a különbséget.
You're there virtually anyway.
Mert úgyis virtuálisan vagy jelen.
We have quite a challenge in front of us.
Elég nagy kihívás előtt állunk.
I have one book, I have two books, and in theory we're getting through these two books today.
2 könyv van nálam, és az az elmélet, hogy a 2 könyvet át fogjuk venni ma.
I'd really like to finish because next week we have a program where we're hosting our guests that come from our little videos in Hungary here.
Szeretnék a végére érni, mert a jövő héten lesz egy programunk azoknak az embereknek, akiket a kis videókon keresztül érünk el.
And that's over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday in New Vrajadam.
És ez egy hétvégi program lesz szombat-vasárnap Új-Vrajadamban.
The following weekend is Janmashtami.
Utána hétvégén lesz Janmashtami.
Following weekend I'm out of station.
Utána nem leszek itt.
For people who think that I'm outside of the railway station somewhere, it means that I will be traveling, so I won't be able to do video.
Hogyha valaki ezt úgy értette volna, hogy a vasútállomáson kívül leszek, akkor ez azt jelenti, hogy utazni fogok, úgyhogy nem fogok tudni videót csinálni.
And then after that is Radhastami.
Utána jön Radhastami.
Then after that I'm in Romania.
Utána Romániában leszek.
Then after that I'm in Turkey.
Utána Törökországban leszek.
Anyway, that's far. So you sort of get the message. We're far away. Obviously, we will be advertising when the next program is.
Tehát jó messzi lesz a következő program, de fogunk értesíteni benneteket róla. Vasárnapi leckéről.
And new topic.
És egy új téma fog jönni.
Did we receive any topics?
Yes.
On Sunday lectures.
Yes, Guruji.
No.
No suggestions for the seminar.
For the Sunday lecture. Because I asked last week for people to
I got suggestions, Guruji. From the word, yes.
Okay, you got suggestions. So we got some suggestions. If you have some more, go ahead. Let's briefly just chant, and then we'll dig in. And also, I can't tell you what the Nitya Seva results are for last week.
Énekeljünk, és aztán elkezdjük, és most nem tudom elmondani, hogy mi volt a Nitya Seva eredmény a múlt héten.
And but lots of good opportunity now. Janmashtami, Radhastami, so many days on which devotional service is magnified 1000-fold.
De van itt sok jó lehetőség, ott van Janmashtami, Radhastami, olyan napok, amikor az odaadó tevékenység az 1000-szeres értékű.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Krishna, 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 Hey.
Krishna, 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 Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Hey.
Krishna, 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 Krishna,
Krishna 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 Rakshaman
Krishna 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 Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna Pahina
Krishna 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 Krishna
Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahila Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Sindhaya Mikhail Jai Gauranga Ki Jai. Panka, could you move over this way so you're not by the doorway? Your whole family can move over down there. There's lots of room. I know, but if you all move there. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting from chapter 20.
Hölgyeim és uraim, a 20. fejezettől kezdjük.
And of the Madhya Lila.
A Madhya Lilában.
And we're jumping a lot.
Sokat fogunk ugrálni.
Just remind me, tell you where we're going. So if you remember, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived in Varanasi.
Ha emlékeztek rá, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu megérkezett Varanasiba.
He was in Prayag.
Prajágban volt.
And there he instructed Sanatana Goswami.
És ott tanította Sanatana Goswami.
Rupa Goswami.
Rupa Goswamit.
I was just stunned. I was stunned.
Így meglepődtem.
Because Amara had actually brought a Chaitanya Charitamrita with him. There's one person in this room with a Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Mert Amara hozott magával egy Chaitanya Charitamritát. Van egy ember a helyiségben egy Chaitanya Charitamritával.
Two people.
Ketten is vannak.
Okay, thank you very much.
Köszönöm szépen.
And Lord Chaitanya came from Prayag to Varanasi,
Az Úr Chaitanya jött Prajágból Varanasiba,
and he was greeted by Chandrasekhar.
és Chandrasekhar köszöntötte.
And Chandrasekhar asked him to stay at his home.
Chandrasekhar megkérte, hogy nála lakjon,
And Lord Chaitanya is taking his lunch at Tapan Mishra's home.
és Tapán Misra otthonában ebédelt az Úr Chaitanya.
So that's where we are.
Itt tartunk.
And what I'm going to be doing is, since we're going through 6 chapters,
Mivel 6 fejezetet szeretnénk
they're
elolvasni,
not short chapters.
és ezek nem rövid fejezetek,
So in many places I will just summarize what's going on.
néhol csak összegezni fogom, hogy mi történik.
At the beginning of every chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita,
A Chaitanya Charitamrita minden fejezetének az elején
Srila Prabhupada gives a summary from Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda Thakur fejezet összefoglalóját írja le.
And which is very, very helpful, because actually if you just put all those together, you had a little book about what Chaitanya Charitamrita is about.
Ami nagyon-nagyon hasznos, mert hogyha csak ezeket egymás mellé tesszük, akkor lehet egy kis könyvünk arról, hogy miről is szól a Chaitanya Charitamrita.
So there's a lot of interesting stories here.
Sok érdekes történet van itt,
And then there is the most extensive teachings in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
és itt van a leghosszabb tanítás a Chaitanya Charitamritában.
I'm just thinking maybe the most extensive teachings that we read, period.
Azt gondolom, hogy talán a leghosszabb tanítás, amit olvashatunk.
Well, it's not as long as Bhagavad Gita,
Persze nem olyan hosszú, mint a Bhagavad Gita,
but longer than anything else, I think, in the Bhagavatam.
de hosszabb, mint bármi más a Bhagavatamban.
Yeah.
Uddhava Gita.
Bhagavad Gita. Uddhava Gita, yeah. So it's very important.
Nagyon fontos.
And when we get to the end, then we'll understand why it's important if we get to the end.
És amikor a végére érünk, majd megértjük, hogy miért olyan fontos, ha a végére érünk.
Okay, so verse 1 is just a introductory prayer,
Az első versük egy bevezető ima,
and says, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has unlimited wonderful opulences. By his mercy, even a person born as the lowest of men can spread the signs of devotional service." Very, very interesting.
nagyon érdekes.
Bhakti Shastra Pavartaka. Someone may become a inaugurator, distributor of devotional service.
Valaki az odaadó szolgálat terjesztőjévé válhat.
Immediately the chapter begins about Sanatana Goswami.
Aztán a fejezet rögtön Sanatana Goswamival kezdődik.
How Sanatana Goswami is coming to meet Lord Chaitanya.
Hogy Sanatana Goswami hogy jött el találkozni az Úr Chaitanyával.
And what's very interesting is that in 1966, when Srila Prabhupada just had started the Krishna consciousness movement,
Ami nagyon érdekes, hogy 1966-ban, amikor Srila Prabhupada épp csak hogy elkezdte a Krishna tudatos mozgalmat,
he just started reading and talking about Sanatana Goswami's journey.
elkezdett olvasni és beszélni Sanatana Goswami útjáról.
So sort of out of nowhere, Prabhupada was, and devotees were sitting and they were enjoying hearing about, here's the story of Sanatana.
Gyakorlatilag minden alap nélkül Prabhupada csak úgy belevágott, hogy beszéljen Sanatana történetéről, és a bakták pedig élvezték hallani.
So it's very interesting that this was like one of the first things that Srila Prabhupada spoke about.
Nagyon érdekes, hogy ez volt az egyik első dolog, amiről Srila Prabhupada beszélt.
Okay. While Sanatana Goswami was imprisoned in Bengal, a letter arrived from Srila Rupa Goswami. Here, Chaitanya Charitamrita doesn't have the letter, but Prabhupada quotes it. And
itt a Chaitanya Charitamritában nincs benne a levél, de Prabhupada idézi.
Sanatana Goswami is mentioned by the annotator of Udbata Chandrika. What does annotator mean? Commentator? Okay, of Udbata Chandrika, which I don't know what it is.
Nem tudom, hogy mi ez az Udbata Chandrika, itt a 3. vers magyarázatában.
And this was the letter that they wrote. Yadupate kva gata maturapuri, ragupate kva gata gatottara kausala, iti vichintya kurushva manastiram nasad idam jagat it avadharaya. Where has the Mathurapuri of Yadupati gone? Where has the northern Koshala of Raghupati gone? By reflection, make the mind steady, thinking, this universe is not eternal. You figure out what that means.
Gyere rá, hogy ez mit is jelent.
Anyway, when Sanatana Goswami received this note from Rupa Goswami, he became very pleased. He immediately went to the jail superintendent, who was a meat eater, and spoke as follows. Yavana. Sanatana Goswami told the Mohammedan jailkeeper, "Dear sir, you are a saintly person and I'm very fortunate. You have full knowledge of the revealed scriptures such as the Quran and similar books. If one releases a conditioned soul or imprisoned person according to religious principles, he himself is also released from material bondage by the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Sanatana Goswami continued, "Previously, I've done much for you. Now I'm in difficulty. Please return my goodwill by releasing me." This prison is still there in Ramakeli.
Ez a börtön még mindig ott van Ramakeliben.
It's a traditional Bengali big building like that.
Egy hagyományos bengáli nagy ilyen épület.
Remember, we used this information that Sanatana Goswami was 8 months in jail.
És emlékezzetek rá, ezt az információt fogjuk használni, hogy Sanatana Goswami 8 hónapot töltött börtönben.
So somehow this letter from Rupa Goswami indicated to him, now's the time to get out.
Valahogy Rupa Goswaminek ez a levele azt jelezte neki, hogy itt az ideje, hogy kiszabadulj.
What Sanatana Goswami is saying, here are 5,000 gold coins. Please accept them. By releasing me, you will receive the results of pious activities and gain material profit as well. Thus you will profit in 2 ways simultaneously. Now, what does it mean? Here are 5,000 gold coins.
Mit jelent ez, hogy itt van 5000 aranyérme?
Sitting in jail with 5,000 gold coins.
A börtönben 5000 aranyérmével ült.
And if you remember, Rupa Goswami had put aside 10,000.
És emlékeztek rá, Rupa Goswami 10,000-et rakott félre neki.
With a grocer. So,
a fűszeresnél.
Anyway, it's sort of quite interesting how this is being narrated. In this way, Sanatana Goswami convinced the jailer keeper, who replied, "Please hear me, my dear sir. I'm willing to release you, but I'm afraid of the government." Sanatana replied, "There's no danger. The Nawab has gone to the south. If he returns, tell him that Sanatana went to Pastul near the bank of the Ganges, and that as soon as he saw the Ganges, he jumped in. Tell him I looked for him a long time, but I could not find any trace of him. He jumped in with his shackles, and therefore he was drowned and washed away by the waves. There's no reason for you to be afraid, for I shall not remain in this country. I shall become a mendicant and go to the holy city of Mecca." Well, one thing that's, I don't know whether you call it interesting or not, but it's a detail, is that there's no toilet in the jail.
Nem tudom, hogy érdekesnek tartjátok-e, de egy részlet, hogy a a börtönben nem volt WC.
So Sanatana Goswami seems like be accompanied, and he'd have shackles, he'd have chains on his feet.
Úgy tűnik, hogy elkísérték, és hogy közben bilincs volt a lábán.
Yeah, it's very hard to conceive of a associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who's got chains on his hands and feet.
Nehéz elképzelni Chaitanya Mahaprabhunak egy társát, hogy így le van láncolva kezénél, lábánál.
So Sanatana Goswami is trying to convince him.
Sanatana Goswami megpróbálja meggyőzni őt.
Sanatana Goswami could see that the mind of the mediator was still not satisfied. He then stacked 7,000 gold coins before him. I want to see this. He made a stack. Rashi Kaila. Where's he got 7,000 gold? I mean, first of all, a gold coin is a very valuable thing in those days.
Honnan van neki 7000 aranyérmeye, és először is abban az időben egy aranyérme nagyon-nagyon értékes volt.
Even now, if you have a gold coin, 1 ounce gold coin, it's almost $2,000.
Ma is, hogyha van valakinek egy unciányi aranyérméje, az $1000 ér. $2000 ér.
So how much more it's worth at that time?
Mennyivel többet érhetett akkor?
And anyway, he's got 7,000.
7000 volt
so
neki.
That means there's 3,000 left.
De azt jelenti, hogy 3000 maradt.
We never hear of that.
Amiről nem hallunk.
Then when the mediator saw the coins, so he actually saw them. Dekiya. So he saw the coins in front of him. He was attracted to them. He then agreed, and that night he cut Sanatana's shackles and let him cross the Ganges. In this way, Sanatana Goswami was released. However, he was not able to walk along the path of the fortress. Walking day and night, he finally arrived at the hilly tract of land known as Patala. So, if you remember, this Ramakeli is sort of in the northeast corner of Bengal.
Ha emlékeztek rá, Rámakéri Bengál északkeleti sarkában van.
And he's going to come go across Bengal and go towards Varanasi.
És megy Bengálon keresztül Varanasi felé.
It's in UP, Varanasi, which is in Uttar Pradesh.
Ami Uttar Pradeshben van.
So this is, north central India.
Észak-közép-India.
It's a long way.
Jó messzi van.
700 kilometers.
700 kilométer.
So even quick walking, that would mean a month and a half.
Még hogyha gyorsan is megy az ember, akkor is ez legalább másfél hónap.
It's hilly, as it says here, then even more.
És látjuk, hogy hegyes-völgyes vidék, és akkor még tovább tart.
After reaching Patada, he met a landholder and submissively requested him to get him across the hilly tract of land. A man who was expert in palmistry was at that time staying with the landlord. Knowing about Sanatan, he whispered the following in the landlord's ear. The palmist said, "This man Sanatan possesses 8 gold coins." Hearing this, the landlord was very pleased and spoke the following to Sanatana Goswami. So that's a good palmist.
Ez egy jó tenyérjós.
Looks at your hand and he says, person who's with you right now has got 8 gold coins.
Megnézi a tenyered, és azt mondja, hogy aki itt van veled, annál van 8 aranyérme.
The landlord said, I shall get you across the hilly tract at night with my own men. Now just take your lunch and cook for yourself. Saying this, the landlord offered Sanatan grains to cook. That means rice. Sanatan then went to the riverside and took his bath. Because Sanatan had been fasting for 2 days, he cooked the food and ate it. However, having formerly been a minister of the Nawab, he began to consider the situation. In other words, he was intelligent, so he saw there's something behind why this person is so so accommodating.
Tehát intelligens volt, és látta, hogy valami oka van annak, hogy ez a személy ilyen kedves velük.
As a former minister for the Nawab, Sanatan could certainly understand diplomacy. He therefore thought, why is this landlord offering me such respect? Thinking in this way, he questions his servant, whose name was Ishan. So he had one servant with him. Sanatan Goswami asked his servant, Ishan, I think you have some valuable things with you. Ishan replied, yes, I have 7 gold coins. Not a good servant.
Nem egy jó szolga.
Although Srila Prabhupada says that all servants steal.
Srila Prabhupada azt mondja, hogy minden szolga lop.
And you can let them get away with a certain amount because that keeps them happy.
És egy bizonyos mennyiséget rájuk kell hagyni, mert annak örülnek.
You can ask Shambhi Hari.
Megkérdezhetitek Shambhi Harit.
Hearing this, Sanatana Goswami chastised his servant, saying, why have you brought this death knell with you? Thereupon Sanatana Goswami took the 7 gold coins in his hand and went to the landlord. Holding the gold coins before him, he spoke as follows, I have these 7 gold coins with me. Please accept them, and from a religious point of view, please get me across that hilly tract of land. I'm a prisoner of the government and I cannot go along the way of the ramparts. It will be very pious of you to take this money and kindly get me across the hilly tract of land. Smiling, the landlord said, before you offered them, I already knew that there were 8 gold coins in your servant's possession. On this very night, I would have killed you and taken your coins. So 8 gold coins would have been enough to kill 2 people.
8 aranyérme megérte volna, hogy megöljön érte 2 embert.
It's very good that you have voluntarily offered them to me. I'm now relieved from such a sinful activity. I'm very satisfied with your behavior. I shall not accept these gold coins, but I shall get you across the hilly tract of land simply to perform pious activity. So even this landlord, his heart was changed.
Még ennek a földesúrnak a
Prabhupada
szíve
usually
is
called him a
megváltozott.
dacoit, a robber.
Prabhupada rablónak hívta őt.
Sanatana Goswami replied, if you do not accept these coins, someone else will kill me for them. It's better that you save me from the danger by accepting the coins. After this settlement was made, the landlord gave Sanatana Goswami 4 watchmen to accompany him. They went through the forest path for the whole night, and thus brought him over the hilly tract of land. After crossing the hills, Sanatana Goswami told his servant, Ishan, I think you still have some balance left from the gold coins. Ishan replied, I still have 1 gold coin in my possession. Sanatana Goswami said, take the coin and return to your home. After departing from Ishan, Sanatana Goswami began traveling alone with a water pot in his hand. Simply covered with a torn quilt, he thus lost all his anxiety. Walking and walking, Sanatana Goswami finally arrived at the place called Hajipur. That evening he sat down within a garden. Where's Hajipur? In Hajipur, there was a gentleman named Shrikanta who happened to be the husband of Sanatana Goswami's sister. So it looks like the whole family was really engaged in the Nawab's service.
Úgy tűnik, hogy az egész család a Nawab szolgálatát végezte.
He was engaged there in government service. Shrikanta had 300,000 gold coins with him, which had been given to him by the emperor for the purchase of horses. Thus Shrikanta was buying horses and dispatching them to the emperor. I mean, that's a lot of gold.
Ez nagyon sok arany.
It's very heavy.
Nagyon
In
nehéz.
fact, today I just saw this BBC article, and it was about the first CIA agents who parachuted into Afghanistan.
Olvastam egy cikket a BBC-n, az első CIA ügynökökről szólt, akik ejtőernyővel berepültek Afganisztánba.
And they were there to find Bin Laden.
Azért, hogy megtalálják Bin Ladent.
And there's a picture of them in the helicopter.
És van egy kép róluk a helikopteren.
And two of them are sitting on these boxes like this.
És ketten ilyen dobozokon ülnek.
So that was all money.
Ez mind pénz volt.
So they took something like $5 million with them.
Valami $5 millió volt velük.
In order to buy off the different warlords.
Hogy lefizessék a különböző ilyen háborús urakat.
To sort of track down their quarry.
Hogy megtalálják, akit kerestek.
You can imagine what 300,000 gold coins is like.
Képzeljétek, hogy milyen lehetett 300 000 aranyérme.
$5 million.
Sokkal több, mint $5 millió.
And that's paper, this is gold.
És az papír, ez meg arany.
Okay, so Srikanta was buying horses and dispatching them to the emperor. When Srikanta was sitting in an elevated place, he could see Sanatana Goswami. That night he took a servant and went to see Sanatana Goswami. When they met, they had many conversations. Sanatana Goswami told him in detail about his arrest and release. Srikanta then told Sanatana Goswami, stay here for at least 2 days and dress up like a gentleman. Abandon these dirty garments. I mean, he just got out of jail.
Most jött ki a börtönből.
For 8 months.
8 hónapig volt benn.
So I don't know whether he had clothes there.
Nem tudom, hogy volt ott ruhája.
He had 7,000 gold coins.
Volt 7000 aranyérméje.
It's a pretty comfy jail.
Elég kényelmes börtön.
But you know, we assume that he's just wearing dirty garments.
Feltételezzük, hogy piszkos ruhát viselt.
Sanatana Goswami replied, I shall not stay here even for a moment. Please help me cross the Ganges. I shall leave immediately. I'm just trying to think of here different Ganges that we're crossing.
Csak gondolkodom itt, hogy ez egy másik Ganges, mint amin mi megyünk át.
We already crossed one Ganges.
Egy Gangesen már átjött.
And now here's another.
És most itt van egy másik.
These are different branches or tributaries.
Ezek különböző ágak.
I shall leave immediately. With great care, Srikanta gave him a woolen blanket. Ezt ne csináld, most csak ülj rendesen egy helyen, és ne nyisögjél. And help him cross the Ganges. Thus Sanatana Goswami departed again. So take note of this woolen blanket.
Jegyezzétek meg ezt a gyapjútakarót.
There's a pastime related to the woolen blanket.
Kapcsolódik egy kettelés ehhez.
After a few days, Sanatana Goswami arrived at Varanasi. He was very pleased to hear about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrival there. Must have been, quite a few days.
Biztos jó néhány nap eltelt.
Sanatana Goswami then went to the house of Chandrasekhar and sat down by the door. Understanding what was happening, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke to Chandrasekhar. So Sanatana Goswami came, he was inquiring, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here, and then he said yes. I don't know the timing. Someone could actually view if we're talking about Rupa Goswami sending a letter when he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Prayag.
Tehát megérkezett, és akkor érdeklődött Chandrasekhartól, hogy itt van-e Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, és valaki megnézhetné itt az időrendet, hogyha Rupa Goswami küldött egy levelet Prayagból.
And letter means someone's on foot or at least by horse.
És a levél azt jelenti, hogy valaki vagy gyalog, vagy lovon ment.
So going all the way to the jail.
Egészen a börtönig.
And seems like they would receive mail there.
És úgy tűnik, hogy ott fogadtak postát.
So and then he gets out and comes 700 kilometers.
És akkor kijött, és jött 700 kilométert.
So someone could look up how that happens, because Lord Chaitanya speaks for 10 days.
Valaki megnézhetné, hogy ez hogy történt, mert az Úr Chaitanya 10 napig beszélt,
He walks from Prayag to Varanasi,
aztán Prajágtól elsétált Váránasziba,
and then he stays for 5 days.
ott maradt 5 napig,
So in all of this time, this happens.
és mindez idő alatt történik ez.
Sanatana Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "There's a devotee at your door. Please call him in." Going outside, Chandrasekhar could not see a Vaishnava at his door. He went outside the door.
Kiment az ajtón, körülnézett.
When Chandrasekhar informed the Lord that no Vaishnava was at his door, the Lord asked him, "Is there anyone at your door?" Chandrasekhar replied, "There's a Muslim mendicant." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately said, "Please bring him here." Chandrasekhar then spoke to Sanatana Goswami, who was still sitting beside the door. So you can imagine how surprised Chandrasekhar was. Why Lord Chaitanya wants to see a Muslim mendicant.
Biztos, vagy gondoljátok el, hogy meglepődhetett Chandrasekhar, hogy az Úr Chaitanya miért akar találkozni egy muszlim vándorral.
Oh, Muslim mendicant, please come in. The Lord is calling you. Sanatana Goswami was very pleased to hear this order, and he entered Chandrasekhar's house. As soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Sanatana Goswami in the courtyard, he immediately went up to him with great haste. After embracing him, the Lord was overwhelmed with ecstatic love. So now Lord Chaitanya's Sanatana Goswami's been traveling. Before that he was living in a jail.
Sanatana Goswami utazott, előtte börtönben lakott.
And Lord Chaitanya immediately embraces him.
És az Úr Chaitanya azonnal megöleli.
So he's not considering his physical condition, how he looks.
Nem érdekli, hogy milyen fizikai állapotban van, hogy néz ki.
He's concerned about who the person is.
Az érdekli, hogy ki is ez a személy.
As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu touched Sanatana Goswami, Sanatana was also overwhelmed with ecstatic love. In a faltering voice he said, "Oh my Lord, do not touch me." Shoulder to shoulder, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami began to cry unlimitedly. Chandrasekhar was very astonished to see this. Here's this Muslim mendicant, and Lord Chaitanya is in such ecstasy to see him.
Chandrasekhar nagyon meglepődött ezen, hogy itt van ez a muzulmán koldus, és az Úr Chaitanya annyira örül, hogy látja extázisban.
Yes, I'm just thinking there are innumerable times that we've read that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, either by looking at somebody or embracing somebody or asking them to chant, that they became overwhelmed with ecstasy.
Számos ilyen példát láttunk, hogy pusztán annak köszönhetően, hogy az Úr Chaitanya rápillant valakire, hogy megölel valakit, vagy ráveszi arra, hogy énekelje a szent nevet, eléri az extázist.
And so I was thinking, well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could give someone ecstatic love to someone who doesn't have it.
De Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meg tudja adni az extatikus szeretetet valakinek, aki nem rendelkezik vele.
And then they may keep it,
és lehet, hogy ők megtartják,
or it may again wane.
Vagy lehet, hogy újra elhalványul.
It's not clear.
Nem egyértelmű.
Or devotees like Sanatana Goswami, who are already transcendentalists.
Vagy olyan bakták, mint Sanatana Goswami, akik nagyon transzcendentalisták.
So ecstatic love means that it was just an udipan, a impetus, something that really aroused his natural ecstasy.
Az extatikus szeretet elérése azt jelenti, hogy csak volt egy udipana, ami a benne lévő természetes extázist kihozta.
It could have raised the advanced devotees to a higher level.
A fejlett baktákat fel tudta emelni egy magasabb szintre.
And then once again that could have been permanent, or it could have abated later.
És ez lehetett állandó, vagy aztán elhalványulhatott.
Different alternatives.
Több változat lehetett.
Catching his hand, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took Sanatana Goswami inside and made him sit in an elevated place next to him. So this was all going on outside at the door.
Tehát ez mind az ajtó előtt történt.
When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began cleansing Sanatana Goswami's body with his own transcendental hand, Sanatana Goswami said, "Oh my Lord, please do not touch me." So he was dirty.
Piszkos volt.
Lord Chaitanya was wiping the dust off his
És
body.
az Úr Chaitanya törölte le a port a testéről.
The Lord replied, "I'm touching you just to purify myself, because by the force of your devotional service you can purify the whole universe." And then he quotes a verse.
Aztán idéz egy verset,
He quotes a few verses.
néhány verset.
Let's see who knows these verses.
Ki tudja ezeket a
There
verseket?
are 1, 2, 3, 4. Bhavad vidha bhagavatas tirtha bhuta swayam vivo tirti bhut kurvanti tirtani svantas tena gadabritaha. Who knows verse? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Saints of your caliber are themselves places of pilgrimage. Because of their purity, they are constant companions of the Lord, and therefore they can purify even the places of pilgrimage. Next verse. Name bhaktas chaturvedhi mad bhaktas swapachapriya tasmai deyam tato grayam satya pujo yatarhyayam. So, even though, who knows that verse? No one. Yeah, I knew the first two lines, but even though a person is a very learned scholar of the Sanskrit Vedic literatures, he's not accepted as my devotee unless he's pure in devotional service. However, even though a person is born in a family of dog eaters, he is very dear to me if he is a pure devotee who has no motive to enjoy fruit of activity or mental speculation. Indeed, all respect should be given to him, and whatever he offers should be accepted. Such devotees are as worshipable as I am. And Viprad Vishad Guna Yutad Arabindana Vyapada Aravinda Vimuktas Sapachambarisham Manye Tadarpita Mano Vachanehi Tarta Pranam Punati Sakulam Natuburi Mana. Who knew that? Okay, I knew it, but I've forgotten some. These are all verses which talk about what the real qualification of a Brahmin is.
Ki tudta ezt? Én tudtam, csak valamennyire már elfelejtettem. Ezek a versek mind a brámanák képesítéséről beszélnek.
And what the potency of a Vaishnava is.
És hogy milyen hatalma van egy Vaisnavának.
One may be born in a Brahmin family and have all 12 Brahminical qualities, but if he's not devoted to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who has a navel shaped like a lotus, he's not as good as a Chandala, who has dedicated his mind, words, activities, wealth, and life to the service of the Lord. Simply to take birth in a Brahmin family or to have Brahminical qualities is not sufficient. One must become a pure devotee of the Lord. If a Swapacha or Chandala is a devotee, he delivers not only himself, but his whole family, whereas a Brahmin who is not a devotee, but simply has Brahminical qualification, cannot even purify himself, not to speak of his family. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, by seeing you, by touching you, and by glorifying your transcendental qualities, one can perfect the purpose of all sense activity. This is the verdict of revealed scriptures. So here's Lord Chaitanya. Someone is, externally not appearing to be like a Vaishnava.
Itt van az Úr Chaitanya, és itt van valaki, aki kívülről nem úgy néz ki, mint egy Vaisnava.
But Lord Chaitanya recognizes him, knows him as such.
De az Úr Chaitanya aként fogadja el.
And he's showing so much respect.
És olyan nagy tiszteletet nyilvánít.
Particularly to Sanatana Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to treat him as a senior.
Főleg Sanatana Goswamival mindig úgy bánt az Úr Chaitanya, mint valakivel, aki nála idősebb, vagy mint egy feljebb valója.
And then the last verse, I would think some devotees know this. Akshino palatvadrisham darshanam hi tano palam tvadrisha gatra sanga jiva palam tvadrisha kirtinam hi sudurlavam bhagavata hiloke. Who knows? 2. My dear Vaishnava, seeing a person like you is the perfection of one's eyesight. Touching your lotus feet is the perfection of the sense of touch. Glorifying your good qualities is the tongue's real activity, for in the material world, it's very difficult to find the pure devotee of the Lord. Sudurlabam Bhagavata Hiloke. Very, very difficult to find the pure devotee.
Nagyon nehéz találni egy tiszta baktát.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, my dear Sanatan, there are Bhakta Abhas, shadows of devotees.
Vannak a bakta árnyéka,
There are devotees, bhaktas.
vannak a bakták,
Then there are Mahabhagavatas.
aztán vannak a mahábhágavaták,
Those are liberated souls.
felszabadult lelkek,
And then Mahabhagavato Mahan, that someone who's even amongst great liberated souls, very, very extraordinary.
és vannak azok, akik még a nagy felszabadult lelkek között is rendkívüliek.
So Srimad Bhagavatam talks about Parikshit Maharaj, Mahabhagavato Mahan, amongst Mahabhagavats, he will be unique.
Srimad Bhagavatam Parikshit Maharajról mondja azt, hogy a mahábhágavaták között is egyedülálló lesz.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, my dear Sanatan, please hear from me. Krishna is very merciful, and he is the deliverer of all fallen souls. My dear Sanatan, Krishna has saved you from Maharorava, life's deepest hell. He is an ocean of mercy, and his activities are very grave. Sanatan replied, I do not know who Krishna is. As far as I'm concerned, I have been released from prison only by your mercy. Very nice line.
Nagyon szép sor.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then asked Sanatana Goswami, how were you released from prison? Sanatana then described the story from beginning to end. So this is very interesting. I mean, we've spoken about that in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travels.
Szóval ez egy nagyon érdekes dolog, beszéltünk már róla az Úr Chaitanya utazása során.
When, for instance, Lord Chaitanya comes back from South India, how he talks all about his trip to the devotees.
Például amikor az Úr Chaitanya visszaért a dél-indiai körútjáról, akkor hogyan mesélt arról a baktáknak.
And although Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so transcendently situated, now he wants to know, well, what happened to you?
Bár az Úr Chaitanya olyan transzcendentális helyzetű, még mindig akarja tudni, hogy mi történt veled.
So he said, now how were you released from the prison? He wanted to know all the details.
Hogy szabadultál a börtönből, akarta tudni az összes részletet.
So he described the story from beginning to end.
És akkor az elejétől a végéig elmesélte.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was interested in what was happening to devotees.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhut érdekelte, hogy mi történik a baktákkal.
And these were, in one sense, quite mundane topics.
És ezek egy bizonyos értelemben véve anyagi témák voltak.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I met your two brothers, Rupa and Anupan, at Prayag. They have now gone to Vrindavan. So if you remember, Lord Chaitanya told them to go to Vrindavan.
Tehát ha emlékeztek rá, az Úr Chaitanya mondta nekik, hogy menjenek Vrindavanba.
Tapan Mishra then extended an invitation to Sanatan, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Sanatan to go get a shave. I shall now elaborate.
Most ezt kifejtem.
But I'll just... After this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Chandrasekhar and asked him to take Sanatana Goswami with him. He also asked him to take away Sanatan's present dress. Chandrasekhar then made Sanatana Goswami look like a gentleman. He took him to bathe in the Ganges, and afterwards he brought him a new set of clothes. Okay, now there's a purport here.
Itt van egy magyarázat.
So I don't know how seriously devotees take Prabhupada's purport.
Nem tudom, hogy mennyire veszik komolyan a bakták Prabhupád magyarázatait,
Or Prabhupada's instructions.
vagy Prabhupád utasításait.
But here it was very clear that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted Sanatana Goswami to shave his beard and his hair.
Itt nagyon egyértelmű, hogy Chaitanya Mahaprabhu azt akarta, hogy Sanatana Goswami borotválja le a szakállát és a haját.
So nowadays beards have become like a very fashionable in the outside world.
Manapság kint nagyon divatossá vált a szakál,
And for some unknown reason, devotees have a habit of following what the non-devotees do.
és valamilyen ismeretlen okból a baktáknak van ez a szokása, hogy követik azt, amit a nem bakták csinálnak.
Now here's what Srila Prabhupada writes.
Itt van, amit Srila Prabhupád ír.
The words Bhadrakarna are significant in this verse. Due to his long hair, mustache and beard, this is the purport to 70.
Ez most a 70. vers magyarázata.
Due to his long hair, mustache and beard, Sanatana Goswami looked like a Daravish or hippie. I don't know if you know what a hippie looks like.
Nem tudom, hogy tudjátok-e, hogy néz ki egy hippi?
Long hair, beard, not necessarily. It wasn't that fashionable then.
Hosszú haj, szakál, azért az nem volt annyira divatos
But
akkoriban.
long hair.
De a hosszú haj az
And
igen.
he's been in jail.
És börtönben volt.
Since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not like Sanatana Goswami's hippie features, he immediately asked Chandrasekhar to get him shaved clean. If anyone with long hair or a beard wants to join this Krishna consciousness movement and live with us, he must civilly shave himself clean. The followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu consider long hair objectionable. Sanatana Goswami was saved from a hellish condition, Maharorava, by the grace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Maharorava is a hell wherein animal killers are placed. In this regard referred to Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. So, in this purport, Prabhupada makes very clear that Lord Chaitanya didn't like beards or long hair.
Ebben a magyarázatban Prabhupád nagyon világosan kijelenti, hogy Chaitanya Mahaprabhu nem szerette a hosszú hajat és a szakállat.
And Prabhupada didn't like beards or long hair.
És Prabhupád nem szerette a szakállat és a hosszú hajat.
And the members of Krishna consciousness find it objectionable. In other words, they don't like it.
És hogy a Krishna tudatos mozgalom tagjai ezt ellenzik, vagyis nem szeretik.
So I think that's enough if anyone wants to follow what Prabhupada said.
Azt gondolom, hogy ez elég, hogyha valaki szeretné követni, amit Prabhupád mondott.
If this doesn't, doesn't satisfy people's ideas, well, that's another thing.
Hogyha valakinek az elképzelését ez nem elégíti ki, az egy másik dolog.
But then they should recognize that they're doing what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada objected to.
De akkor legalább ismerjék fel, vagy tudják, hogy valami olyat csinálnak, amit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu vagy Srila Prabhupada ellenzett.
Chandrasekhar offered a new set of garments to Sanatana Goswami, but Sanatana did not accept them. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard news of this, he became unlimitedly happy. So now we have a series of events where Sanatana Goswami is changing from being the prime minister of a country to just a sannyasi.
Tehát most ilyen események sorát látjuk, hogy hogyan volt ez a változás. Sanatana Goswami egy ország miniszterelnöke volt, és hogy lett belőle sannyasi.
Son's name is Markandeya. Markandeya, put your hand up. So this afternoon I asked Markandeya, what does he want to be when he grows up?
Délután megkérdeztem Markandéját, hogy mi szeretne lenni, ha felnő.
He said he wants to be a sannyasi.
Azt mondta, hogy sannyasi.
So everyone should, okay, now you can put your hand up.
Leteheted a kezed.
So everyone should give him their blessings.
Mindenki adja neki az áldásait.
After bathing at noon, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the house of Tapan Mishra for lunch. He took Sanatana Goswami with him. After washing his feet, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down for lunch. He asked Tapan Mishra to supply Sanatana Goswami lunch also. Tapan Mishra then said, Sanatana has some duty to perform, therefore he cannot accept lunch now. At the conclusion of the meal, I shall supply Sanatana with remnants. After eating, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took rest for a while. Tapan Mishra then gave Sanatana Goswami the remnants of food left by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Tapan Mishra offered Sanatana Goswami a new cloth, he did not accept it. Instead, he spoke as follows: "If you want to give me some cloth according to your desire, please give me an old cloth you have used." He doesn't want new clothes, he wants old clothes.
Nem akar új ruhát, régi ruhát akar.
When Tapan Mishra gave Sanatana Goswami a used dhoti, now note, in the
Megjegyzendő,
Bengali it says, Tabe Mishra Puratana Eka Dhoti Dila. There's the word dhoti.
itt van ez a szó, a dhoti bengáliul.
So certainly the word dhoti was in use at that time.
Tehát kétségtelen, hogy használatban volt ez a dhoti szó akkoriban.
Sanatana immediately tore it in pieces to make 2 sets of outer cloth and underwear. So that means a gamsha, a chadar, and then 2 smaller pieces for underwear.
És ez azt jelenti, hogy gamsa és csadar, és 2 kisebb darab az alsó
So
ruházatban.
this was from old clothes that Tapan Mishra had, and he said, "No, you keep the new cloth you just bought."
Tehát ez Tapán Misrának valamilyen régi ruhájából volt, és mondta, te csak tartsd meg az új ruhát, amit vettél.
When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the Maharashtriya Brahmin to Sanatan, the Brahmin immediately invited Sanatana Goswami for full meals. So this is this Maharashtrian Brahmin who really liked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Ez az a maharasztrai brámana, aki nagyon szerette Chaitanya
He's
Mahaprabhut.
the one who arranged for Lord Chaitanya to meet the Mayavadis,
Ő szervezte meg, hogy az Úr Chaitanya találkozzon a májavádikkal.
Prakashananda, and all the other impersonalists.
Prakásanandával és a többi
The Brahmin said,
impersonalistával.
"My dear Sanatan, as long as you remain in Kashi, please accept lunch at my place." Sanatan replied, "I shall practice the process of Madhukari. Why should I accept full meals in the house of a Brahmin?" So now Sanatana Goswami changes his eating habits.
Sanatana Goswami most megváltoztatja az étkezési szokásait.
One can just imagine how nicely he used to eat as 10,000 gold coins.
Gondolhatjuk, hogy milyen gazdagon evett korábban, ugye 10,000 aranypénze volt.
So now he's only going to do Madhukari.
Most csak Madhukárit fog
And
csinálni.
I'll just read a little from the purport.
Picit olvasok itt a 81-es
The
magyarázatból.
word Madhukari comes from the word Madhukara, which refers to bees collecting honey from flower to flower. So Madhukari is a saintly person or a mendicant who does not accept a full meal at one house, but begs from door to door, taking a little food from each householder's place. In this way, he does not overeat or give householders unnecessary trouble. A person in the renounced order may beg, but not cook. His begging should not be a burden for the householders. The Madhukari process is strictly to be followed by a Babaji, that is, one who has attained the Paramahamsa stage. So it's certainly different than the standard of, for instance, Varnashram sannyasis,
Ez nyilván más, mint a varnásrama szannyásziknak a helyzete,
who are supposed to be invited by grihastas to their homes.
akiket meg kell, hogy hívjanak a grihaszták az otthonukba.
Often this Madhukari means that they take some kind of vow.
Ez a mádukari, ez általában azt jelenti, hogy valamilyen fogadalmat vesznek.
And one vow may be, I'm going to knock on 3 doors,
És lehet mondjuk az a fogadalom, hogy 3 ajtón fogok bekopogni,
new doors.
új ajtón.
Not people I've gone to before who I know give.
Nem olyan ajtókon, ahol tudom, hogy adnak.
The idea
Mert
is
már
that
voltam.
if Krishna wants me to eat, he will feed me and whatever he wants me to eat.
Ugye ez az elképzelés, hogy ha Krishna azt akarja, hogy egyek, akkor meg fog etetni, és azt fogom enni, amit akar, hogy egyek.
And each door he will just accept one chapati.
És minden ajtónál csak egy csapátit fogad el.
Or maybe some simple sabji.
Vagy lehet, hogy egy kis egyszerű szabzsit.
Lord Chaitanya often talks about the spinach.
Úr Chaitanya sokszor beszél a spenótról.
And if all 3 give, then you've got 3 chapatis.
És ha mind a hárman adnak, akkor kaptál 3
They may
csapátit.
have taken the vow that, well, half of what I give, I feed to the cows.
Lehet, hogy a fogadalom része az, hogy annak a felét, amit kapok, odadok a teheneknek.
Which means that if you only get 1 chapati,
Ami azt jelenti, hogy ha csak egy csapátit kapsz,
then you only eat a half of a chapati.
akkor csak egy fél csapátit eszel.
And this is called depending on Krishna.
És ezt úgy hívják, hogy Krishnára bízom magam.
Krishna's in everybody's heart.
Krishna ott van mindenki szívében.
If he wants to inspire someone, then he will.
Ha valakit inspirálni akar, akkor inspirálni
And if he
fog.
doesn't, well, then he wants me to fast.
És ha nem, akkor azt akarja, hogy böjtöljek.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt unlimited happiness to observe Sanatana Goswami's strict following of the principles of sannyas. However, he repeatedly glanced at the woolen blanket Sanatana Goswami was wearing. So, you know, they were together, but Lord Chaitanya kept looking at this blanket.
Együtt voltak, de az Úr Chaitanya mindig így nézegette a takaróját.
Sanatana Goswami, same thing from this letter from Rupa Goswami, as well as from, you know, how that landlord was very favorable to him. He's extremely intelligent.
És Sanatana Goswami ugye érzékelte Rupa Goswami leveléből, vagy ahogy az a földesúr meg tudta állapítani, hogy mennyi pénz van nála. Nagyon intelligens volt.
That was his whole service, is he's the prime minister, so he has to give good advice to the Nawab.
Ez volt a szolgálata, hogy mikor miniszterelnök volt, hogy jó tanácssal kellett ellátni a Nawabot.
Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was repeatedly glancing at this valuable woolen blanket. Remember, this he got from Sri Kanta, his brother-in-law.
Emlékezzetek rá, hogy ezt a takarót ezt Srikantától kapta a sógorától.
As he was coming down towards Varanasi.
Ahogy jött Varanasi felé.
Sanatana Goswami could understand that the Lord did not approve of it. He then began to consider a way to give it up. Thinking in this way, Sanatana went to the bank of the Ganges to bathe. While there, he saw that a mendicant from Bengal had washed his quilt and had spread it out to dry. Generally, that's what happens.
Általában ez történik.
Sannyasis or sadhus, they just wear a piece of cloth.
Szanyászik vagy száduk csak egy ruhát viselnek.
So they go to a ghat.
Oda mennek egy gáthoz,
They wash it.
kimossák,
They just lay it out in the sun.
és kiterítik a napra,
On the ground.
a földre.
And the stone is so hot and the sun is so strong.
És a kő olyan forró,
It dries instantly.
és a nap olyan erős, hogy azonnal megszárad.
And then they put it on again.
És akkor újra felveszik.
So Sanatana Goswami told the Bengali mendicant, "My dear brother, please do me a favor. Trade me your quilt for this wooden blanket." The mendicant replied, "Sir, you are a respectable gentleman. Why are you joking with me? Why would you trade your valuable blanket for my torn quilt?" Sanatana said, "I'm not joking. I'm speaking the truth. Kindly take this blanket in exchange for your torn quilt." Saying this, Sanatana Goswami exchanged the blanket for the quilt. He then returned to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the quilt on his shoulder. When Sanatana Goswami returned, the Lord asked, so this is funny, Lord Chaitanya, I mean, he knows everything anyway.
Az Úr Chaitanya persze mindent tud.
But now, oh, Sanatana, where's your woolen blanket?
De most kérdezi, hogy ó, Sanatana, hol van a gyapjú takarod?
Sanatana Goswami then narrated the whole story to the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "I have already deliberately considered this matter. Since Lord Krishna is very merciful, he has nullified your attachment for material things. Why should Krishna allow you to maintain a last bit of material attachment? After vanquishing a disease, a good physician does not allow any of the disease to remain." So, which is very interesting. I mean, the blanket is symbolic.
Nagyon érdekes, hogy ez a takaró, az egy szimbólum.
However, it is a fact that as devotees become advanced in Krishna consciousness,
De tény, hogy ahogy a bakták fejlődnek a Krishna tudatban,
the anarthas become subtler and subtler,
az anarták egyre finomabbak és finomabbak,
and in one sense they may become more and more difficult to give up.
és bizonyos értelemben egyre nehezebb lehet feladni őket.
So Lord Chaitanya indicates that, Krishna will see to it one way or the other. Either you do it voluntarily, or he'll take it away from you.
És Úr Chaitanya itt jelzi ezt, hogy vagy önként fel fogod adni, vagy majd Krishna elveszi tőled.
It's contradictory to practice Madhukari and at the same time wear a valuable blanket. One loses his spiritual strength by doing this, and one will also become an object for jokes. So interesting that if one has habits or, wears things or does things that are unbecoming one's station, one's spiritual strength decreases.
Nagyon érdekes, hogyha valaki csinál valamit, vagy visel valamit, ami a helyzetéhez nem illik, akkor a lelki ereje csökken.
Sannyasi, grihasta, vanaprastha, brahmachari, everyone's got their duties.
Minden varnának megvan a kötelessége.
So here the indication is that when one does not follow one's duties, then one's spiritual strength will be sapped.
És itt arra találunk utalás, hogyha valaki nem követi a kötelességét, akkor a lelki ereje lecsökken.
And then other people will also make fun of a person.
És mások pedig kigúnyolják.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead has saved me from the sinful life of material existence. By his design, my last piece of material attraction is now gone. Being pleased with Sanatana Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed his causeless mercy upon him. By the Lord's mercy, Sanatana Goswami received the spiritual strength to inquire for him. So, as I'm hearing this story, I receive blankets faster than I can give them away.
Hogy hallom ezt a történetet, én gyakrabban kapok takarókat, mint amilyen gyorsan el tudom ajándékozni őket.
And some of them are sort of such quality that I'm afraid to give them to just anybody because the donor will become upset.
Van, amikor olyan a minőség ezeknek a takaróknak, hogy nem merem senkinek se odaadni, mert ki fogom buktatni azt, aki megkapja.
So these are some of the pitfalls, or at least some of the baggage that comes along with preaching.
Bocsánat, azt, aki adja, akitől kaptam én, és ezek a nehézségek a prédikálásban.
Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave Sanatana Goswami the spiritual strength to inquire from him. Formerly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Roy spiritual questions, and by the Lord's causeless mercy, Ramananda Roy could properly reply. Now, by the Lord's mercy, Sanatana Goswami questioned the Lord, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally supplied the truth. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, personally told Sanatana Goswami about Lord Krishna's real identity. He also told him about the Lord's conjugal love, his personal opulence, and the mellows of devotional service. All these truths were explained to Sanatana Goswami by the Lord himself out of his causeless mercy. Putting a straw in his mouth and bowing down, Sanatana Goswami clasped the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and humbly spoke as follows. Sanatana Goswami said, I was born in a low family, and my associates are all low-class men. I myself am fallen and am the lowest of men. Indeed, I have passed my whole life fallen in the well of sinful materialism. I do not know what is beneficial for me and what is detrimental. Nonetheless, in ordinary dealings, people consider me a learned scholar, and I am also thinking of myself as such. Out of your causeless mercy, you have delivered me from the materialistic path. Now, by the same causeless mercy, please tell me what my duty is. This really is sort of the ideal interaction between guru and disciple.
Ez itt egy nagyon ideális kapcsolat a guru és a tanítvány között.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in the role of spiritual master.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a lelki tanítómester szerepében van.
Who am I? Why do the threefold miseries always give me trouble? If I do not know this, how can I be benefited? Actually, I do not know how to inquire about the goal of life and the process for obtaining it. Being merciful upon me, please explain all these truths. So once again, it's a constantly repeated theme. What is the goal of life?
Ez egy állandóan ismétlődő téma, hogy mi az élet célja,
and how do you achieve it?
És hogyan lehet elérni.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Lord Krishna has bestowed his full mercy upon you, so that all these things are known to you. For you, the threefold miseries certainly do not exist. So Lord Chaitanya confirms that Sanatana Goswami is already Sagunan Samatitaitan, he's already transcendently situated.
Az Úr Chaitanya itt megerősíti, hogy Sanatana Goswami már transzcendentális helyzetű.
Since you possess Lord Krishna's potency, you certainly know these things. However, it is the nature of a sadhu to inquire. Although he knows these things, the sadhu inquires for the sake of strictness. In other words, even though someone may know what appears to be very basic topics, one will inquire from a more advanced person.
Lehet, hogy valaki jártas vagy érti az alapvető dolgokat, de még mindig kérdez egy fejlettebb személytől.
It doesn't mean that immediately, because, well, I'm spiritually advanced, and here's someone who's very spiritually advanced, I immediately start asking about some very elevated topics.
Nem jelenti azt, hogy én lelkileg fejlett vagyok, és itt van valaki, aki lelkileg még fejlettebb, és akkor nagyon emelkedett témákról kell őt kérdeznem.
But rather, we systematically move up the spiritual ladder.
Hanem úgy szisztematikusan haladunk felfelé a lelki létrán.
So this is the characteristic of a sadhu.
Tehát ez egy szádu jellemzője.
And then here's a verse which I tried remembering because this Nirbandini is a Nirbanda Yukta Vairagya, Krishna Vairagya, Muchate is a word that often comes up.
Itt van egy vers, amire próbálok emlékezni, mert ez a Nirbandini szó, az gyakran előkerül.
Achirad eva sarvartan siddhyat esham abhipshita saddharmasyava bodhaya yesham nirbandini mata. And yeah, this is from Naradiya Purana.
Ez a vers a Naradiya Puránából van.
Those who are anxious to awaken their spiritual consciousness, who have unflinching intelligence, that's what this Nirbandini means, unflinching intelligence.
Ezt jelenti ez a Nirbandini szó, hogy rendületlen értelem.
Nirbandini mati. Unflinching intelligence and who are not deviated certainly attain the desired goal. So the verse is important in the sense that it really assures the devotee that if he has these two things, he'll be successful.
Ez egy fontos vers, mert biztosítja a baktát afelől, hogyha ezzel a két dologgal rendelkezik, akkor biztos, hogy sikeres lesz.
Unflinching intelligence.
Rendíthetetlen intelligencia.
So that his mind does not bewilder his intelligence.
Vagyis az elméje nem zavarja meg az értelmét.
And who's not deviated from the path.
És nem tér le az útról.
You are fit to propagate the cult of devotional service, therefore gradually hear all the truths about it from me. I shall tell you about them. Jiveda Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatashta Shakti, Beda Beda Prakash Suryam Shakirana Yoiche Agni Jwalachoy, Swabhavika Krishnera Tina Prakara Shakti Hoy. Okay, this is where we stop.
Itt állunk meg.
Because this is where the instructions begin.
Itt kezdődnek el a tanítások.
And I'm just going to try to do a very quick overview from these introductory portions of each chapter.
És csak egy kis áttekintést próbálok adni itt a fejezetek bevezetőiből.
So, like from this verse, first they discuss the constitutional position of the living entity.
Először is az élőlény eredeti helyzetéről van szó,
And at the conclusion of these 5 chapters,
és az 5 fejezetnek a konklúziója,
Kaviraj Goswami says, well, I've told you a summary of what they talked about.
Kaviraj Goswami azt mondja, hogy összefoglaltam azt, amiről beszéltek.
So they're talking for 2 months.
2 hónapig beszéltek.
Well, yeah, that's it. So they're talking for 2 months.
Tehát 2 hónapig beszélgettek.
Before I said Lord Chaitanya stayed for 5 days, he stayed 5 days after that.
Tehát azt mondtam, hogy az Úr Chaitanya 5 napig maradt, de 5 napig maradt ezután.
So just imagine being instructed by Krishna for 2 months, every single day.
Képzeljétek el, hogy Krishna tanít 2 hónapon keresztül minden áldott nap.
Quite extraordinary.
Nagyon különleges.
First they discussed constitutional position of the living entity.
Először az élőlény eredeti helyzetéről volt szó,
That Jiva is one of Krishna's potencies.
hogy a Jiva, Krishna egyik energiája.
After this, the Lord explained the way of devotional service.
Ezután az Úr odaadó szolgálatáról volt szó,
And then he analyzed Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan,
aztán elemezte Brahman, Paramátmát és Bhagavan,
as well as the expansions of Krishna,
valamint Krishna kiterjedéseit.
Swayamrupa, Tarikatma, and Avesh. And I don't know if you're familiar with those. It's quite an entangled tree.
Nem tudom, hogy ismerős ez nektek, ez egy elég bonyolult fa.
Extraordinary Krishna's expansion.
Krishna kiterjedései nagyon különlegesek.
They're divided into many forms, such as Vaibhav and Prabhav.
És sokféle formája van, Vaibhava és Prabhava.
Then he also described the incarnations of Krishna.
Aztán Krishna inkarnációiról volt szó.
Purusha avatar, Matsya avatar, Guna avatar, Shaktavish avatar. Then they discussed the divisions of Krishna's different ages.
Aztán Krishna különböző korairól volt szó.
This is now in Vrindavan.
Ez Vrindavanban van.
That Krishna goes through the 3 ages.
Krishnának 3 kora van.
Balya, Poganda, and then ultimately Kaishor. And there are different pastimes in each age.
És minden korban vannak különböző kettelések.
So childhood is pastimes with parents mostly.
A gyerekkorban főleg a szüleivel vannak kettelései.
Then with boyhood, with cowherd boys mostly.
Fiúkorában főleg a tehénpásztor fiúkkal.
And Kaishor youth, or fresh youth, just with the gopis mostly.
És az üde ifjúkorában főleg a gópikkal.
And then how Krishna attained his permanent form when he reached youth.
És aztán arról van szó, hogy Krishna hogyan élte el az örök formáját a ifjúkorára.
This is the characteristic of Krishna in the material world.
Ez Krishna jellemzője az anyagi világban.
He goes through these ages until he comes to just under 16 years.
Megtapasztalja ezeket a korokat, amíg el nem éri a 16 éves kort.
15 years, 10 months.
15 éves, 10 hónapos.
And that's it, he stops over there.
És ott megáll.
In the spiritual world, he's always like that.
A lelki világban mindig ilyen.
So that's one of the things that happens in the material world that doesn't happen in the spiritual world.
Ez az egyik dolog, ami az anyagi világban történik, de a lelki világban nem.
This aging, going through those.
Ez a koroknak a váltakozása.
So that's chapter 20, which is entitled "The Lord Instructs Sanatana Goswami."
Tehát ez volt a 20. fejezet, aminek az a címe, hogy az Úr tanítja Sanatana
And
Goswamit.
then we come to the chapter, "The Opulence and Sweetness of Krishna."
Aztán jön az a fejezet, aminek az a címe, hogy Krishna fensége és édessége.
And that is one of the most wonderful chapters of Chaitanya Charitamrita.
És ez az egyik legcsodálatosabb fejezete a Chaitanya Charitamritának.
Just because Lord Chaitanya's, well, He starts off by describing Krishna's opulences.
Az Úr Chaitanya először Krishna fenségeiről beszél.
Krishna Loka, the spiritual planets, the causal ocean, material world.
Krishna Lókáról, a lelki világról, az okozati óceánról és az anyagi világról.
And then as Lord Chaitanya is talking there, he talks about this pastime of Lord Brahma coming to Dwarka.
Aztán beszél erről a kettelésről, amikor az Úr Brahmát Dvárakába megy.
And you know, the doorman says, Lord Brahma is here to see you.
És az ajtón állva azt mondja, hogy itt van az Úr Brahma.
And Krishna says, which Brahma?
És Krishna azt kérdezi, hogy melyik?
And so the doorman goes back. He wants to know which Brahma.
És akkor visszamegy az őr, és kérdezi, hogy akarja tudni, hogy melyik Brahma.
He says, well, can't you see? One with the four heads.
Nem látod? Hát a négyfejű.
So he goes back and says, it's the four-headed Brahma.
Akkor visszamegy, mondja, hogy a négyfejű Brahma.
So after some discussion, Brahma asks, why did you ask which Brahma?
És akkor egy kis beszélgetés után megkérdezi, miért kérdezted, hogy melyik Brahma?
So then Lord Chaitanya calls all the Brahmas of all the universes into his room.
És akkor az Úr hívja az összes Brahmát az összes univerzumból a szobájába.
Imagine a room like this.
Képzeljétek el egy ekkora szobát.
And all the Brahmas of all the universes.
Az összes univerzum összes Brahmája ott van.
Some of which have million heads, 10
Valakinek
million heads.
millió feje van, 10 millió feje van.
Don't ask how you fit all the heads on.
Ne kérdezz, hogy ez hogy fér el.
And they're all there in one place.
És mindannyian ott vannak egy helyen.
And they don't see each other.
És nem látják egymást.
A Brahma is the one. Our four-headed Brahma is the one who sees them all.
A mi négyfejű Brahmánk látja mindannyiukat.
And some of these are karmis, and some of them are devotees.
Vannak közöttük karmik, vannak bakták,
Some of them are mixed devotees.
vannak kevert bakták.
And then Lord Krishna just tells them to go, and all of a sudden they disappear.
És aztán az Úr Krishna mondja, hogy menjenek, és mind eltűnnek.
Anyway, at that point, Lord Chaitanya he gets really lost in Krishna.
És akkor az Úr Chaitanya nagyon elveszik
So
Krishnában.
really what's happening is that the Krishna's opulences ultimately lead to Krishna's sweetness.
És igazából az történik, hogy Krishna fensége Krishna édességéhez vezet.
So Srila Prabhupada said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that the author has presented some nice poems about the pastimes of Krishna and his beauty.
Azt mondja, hogy a szerző szép verseket mutatott be Krishna ketteléseiről és Krishna rendkívüli szépségéről.
Itt jó meleg van itt bent, nem? Paid money for air conditioning, it just doesn't exist. I would recommend devotees to read this chapter 21.
Tehát javaslom, hogy a bakták olvassák el ezt a 21. fejezetet.
Let's see, and I won't read any quotes from there.
Nem fogok onnan idézeteket olvasni.
I mean, there's so many beautiful verses.
Olyan sok gyönyörű vers van itt.
It's worth devotees reading them.
Érdemes időt fordítani rá a baktáknak.
Lord, this is verse 101.
Ez a 101-es vers.
Lord Krishna has many pastimes, of which his pastime as a human being are the best. His form as a human being is the supreme transcendental form. In this form he is a cowherd boy. He carries a flute in his hand, and his youth is new. He is also an expert dancer. All this is just suitable for his pastimes as a human being. He says, my dear Sanatan, the sweet, attractive, transcendental form of Krishna is so nice. Just try to understand it. Even a fractional understanding of Krishna's beauty can merge all the three worlds in the ocean of love. He attracts all living entities within the three worlds. Okay, but I said I'm not going to go there, otherwise then we won't be able to progress.
Nem kezdek ebbe bele, mert ezt mondtam, mert akkor nem fogjuk befejezni.
Lord Chaitanya finally he really lost his awareness of who he was talking to.
Az Úr Chaitanya teljesen megfeledkezett arról, hogy ki is ő és kihez beszél.
He, embraced Sanatana Goswami.
Megölelte Sanatana Goswami.
And he's just talking about constantly Krishna's beauty and the gopis.
És csak beszélt Krishna szépségéről és a gópikról.
This is 139.
Ez a 139-es.
The beauty of Krishna's smile is the sweetest feature of all. His smile is like the full moon that spreads its rays throughout the three worlds, Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual sky of the Vaikunthas, and Devidam, the material world. Thus Krishna's shining beauty spreads in all 10 directions. Úgy hallottam, hogy lettünk ventilátorokat ide. Úgyhogy senki. Just to let you know, this place is abandoned. Everybody is on Padayatra.
Csak tudjátok, hogy itt ez egy teljesen elhagyatott hely lett, mindenki elment Padayatrára.
And Krishna is the source of all beauty.
Krishna minden szépség forrása.
So just imagine everything that exists. Yat yat vibhuti mat satsam srimat urjitva evava. So there's beauty about everything.
Képzeljétek el, hogy minden, ami létezik, ugye mindenben van valamennyi szépség.
So there's beauty of humans, there's beauty of creation, there's beauty of sunsets, there's beauty in stone, there's so much beauty.
Van szépség az emberekben, a teremtésben, a naplementében, a kőben, annyi szépség van.
So if you took all of this beauty and took just the beauty out of everything.
Hogyha fogjátok ezt a szépséget, mindenből kiveszitek ezt a szépséget,
and you just put all that beauty together.
És egybe rakjátok,
it wouldn't equal Krishna.
Nem lenne egyenlő
But that's
Krishnával.
coming from Krishna.
De Krishnából jön.
So it's extraordinary this, and this is ultimately Krishna's primary feature.
És ez Krishna elsődleges vonása.
Of all of his opulences, Krishna's beauty is his primary opulence.
Minden fensége közül Krishnának az édessége az elsődleges
Now
fensége.
after this, Lord Chaitanya starts talking about, this is chapter 22, the process of devotional service.
Aztán a 22. fejezetben Chaitanya Mahaprabhu elkezd az odadó szolgálat folyamatáról beszélni.
This chapter is very important to study because it really teaches you how you advance in Krishna consciousness.
Ezt a fejezetet nagyon fontos tanulmányozni, mert megtanítja, hogy hogyan tudsz fejlődni a Krishna tudatban.
It talks about sadhana bhakti.
A sadhana bhaktiról szól.
So in the 22nd chapter, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the process of devotional service. In the beginning, again, he talks about the truth of the living entity and the uniqueness of devotional service. Then he describes the uselessness of mental speculation and mystic yoga. And Lord Chaitanya really gets into this.
Nagyon belemegy ezekbe az Úr Chaitanya.
He wants to point out that karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, ashtanga yoga, these things are really a waste of time.
Nagyon hangsúlyozni akarja, hogy karma joga, gyána joga, hatha joga, astanga joga mind időpazarlás.
When you can already take to bhakti yoga.
Hogyha már tudod gyakorolni a bhakti jogát.
So Prabhupada or Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, one should give up all these useless processes and take seriously Krishna consciousness.
Azt mondja Bhaktivinoda Thakur, hogy add fel ezeket a haszontalan folyamatokat, és végezd a Krishna tudatot, gyakorold a Krishna tudatot.
And says that even though one does that, well, maybe due to my past, people are sometimes disturbed by past sinful reaction.
Szóval azt mondja, hogy a múltjuk miatt az embereket lehet, hogy zavarják a múltbeli bűnös visszahatásai,
Krishna will save them.
de Krishna meg fogja menteni őket.
And now here Prabhupada points out, he says the fact is
És aztán Prabhupád rámutat arra, azt mondja, hogy az a tény,
that devotional service is bestowed by the blessings of a pure devotee.
hogy az odadó szolgálatot egy tiszta bakta áldásainak köszönhetően lehet megkapni.
And one needs to receive a mercy of a devotees to awaken one's dormant Krishna consciousness.
És meg kell kapni a bakták kegyét ahhoz, hogy az ember szunnyadó Krishna tudata felébredjen.
It's there, Jivera Swarupoin Nityera Krishna Das, but one needs the association of Vaishnava to awaken that.
Ott van, de egy Vaisnava társaságára van szükség ahhoz, hogy felébredjen.
So, if one has firm faith in the words of a great soul, pure devotional service will awaken.
Akinek meginghatatlan hite van, egy nagy lélek szavaiban, tiszta odaadó szolgálata életre kell.
Then Lord Chaitanya talks about the distinction between pure devotional service and mixed devotional service.
Aztán az Úr Chaitanya a tiszta odaadó szolgálat és a kevert odaadó szolgálat közötti különbségről
And
beszél.
what are the qualities of pure devotee?
És hogy mik egy tiszta bakta jellemzői.
It's interesting that in Lord Chaitanya's teachings, he is quoting verses that you find later on in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu or other texts.
Érdekes, hogy az Úr Chaitanya tanításai során idéz verseket, amiket Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhuban és más szövegekben találunk később.
And it's quoting Srimad Bhagavatam as well.
És idézi a Srimad Bhagavatamot.
We've discussed this a lot with my godbrothers.
Az Isten testvéreimmel már sokat beszéltünk erről.
And some of the information that has emerged is that many of these verses were already existent and known to Vaishnavas.
És az az információnk, hogy ezek közül a versek közül sok már létezett, és ismerték őket a vajsnavák.
And what their source was, we didn't figure out, but that they were already around.
Hogy mi volt a forrásuk, azt nem tudtuk kideríteni, de már léteztek.
Devotees' most formidable enemy is association with women in an enjoying spirit. And then conversely, a Vaishnavi's most formidable enemy is association with men in an enjoying spirit.
A bakta legrettenetesebb ellensége társulni nőkkel élvező hangulatban, és a nőknek meg ugyanígy társulni férfiakkal. És aztán az abaktákkal való társulásról van szó. Tehát ez a két dolog.
Sri Sangha, how does it go? Eka? No, but how does it start? Hey Vaishnava. Asat Sangha.
Asat Sangatyag.
I see others have the same problem. Asat Sangatyag, Hey Vaishnava Vichar, Sri Sangha. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Asat Sangha and Sri Sangha.
Asat Sangha és Sri
Bad
Sangha.
association, whoever that may be.
Rossz társulást adjuk fel, bárki legyen is az.
Which actually in its most essential way means the enjoying spirit. Sri Sangha.
A nők társaságánál itt a hangsúlyozom, hogyha élvező hangulatban akarunk nőkkel társulni.
So then it talks about the 6 symptoms of surrender.
Aztán a meghódolás 6 szimptomájáról van szó.
And that devotional service is divided into 2 categories, sadhana bhakti, regulated devotion, and spontaneous devotion.
És aztán arról, hogy az odaadó szolgálata 2 részre van osztva, a sadhana bhaktira és a spontán odaadó
Chaitanya
szolgálatra.
Mahaprabhu then discusses the 64 aspects of regulated devotional service,
Aztán a szabályozott odaadás 64 eleméről van szó,
of which 5 are most important.
amely közül 5 a legfontosabb.
Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavat Shavana, Mathura Vasa, Srimurtiya, Shabadaya Sevaya. So these 5 things.
Tehát ez az 5.
Yeah, and then again, speculative knowledge and things constantly come up as being obstructions to spiritual life.
És aztán újra és újra feljön ez, hogy a spekulatív tudás és a misztikus jóga árt a lelki életnek.
Then spontaneous devotional service arises
Aztán a spontán odaadó szolgálat felébred,
when one follows a pure devotee who is awakened to spontaneous love of God.
hogyha valaki követ egy tiszta baktát, aki már felébredt a spontán Isten szeretetre.
So then Lord Chaitanya talks about those who are already situated in love of God
Aztán az Úr Chaitanya beszél azokról, akik már elérték az Isten szeretetet,
and those who are trying to follow in their footsteps.
illetve azokról, akik az ő lábnyomaikat próbálják követni.
So that's this chapter.
Ez a fejezet.
Then that takes us to the next chapter,
És aztán így eljutunk a következő
which
fejezetig,
is life's ultimate goal.
ami az élet végső céljáról
Well,
szól.
now here Lord Chaitanya is talking about love of God.
Vagyis itt az Úr Chaitanya az Isten szeretetről
He's
beszél.
talking about sadhana bhakti and bhava bhakti,
Itt beszélt a Szádana Bhaktiról és a Bhava Bhaktiról
and now here he talks about prema bhakti.
korábban, és itt pedig a Préma Bhaktiról van szó.
And he talks about emotion and love and the awakening of one's original relationship.
Beszél érzelemről és szeretetről és az eredeti Krisnával való kapcsolat
And as
felébredéséről.
always, what are the stages of development?
És mindig beszél a fejlődés szintjeiről.
Yatraya lakshanam proktam. Things are known by their quality.
A dolgokat a jellemzőikről lehet megismerni.
If I ask you, what's a dog?
Ha megkérdezem tőled, hogy mi egy kutya,
And you start talking about something that barks, has a tail, and so on.
akkor azt mondod, hogy valami, ami ugat, farka van, stb.
Chases after bones and
Csontok után szalad,
balls.
és labdák
So,
után.
everything according to qualities.
Tehát mindent a jellemzőiről ismerünk meg.
And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks about the development of love of God.
Aztán Chaitanya Mahaprabhu az Isten szeretet fejlődéséről beszél.
So sometimes I ask devotees, all right, what's the goal of Krishna consciousness?
Néha megkérdezem a baktákat, hogy mi a Krishna tudat célja.
It says to love Krishna.
Azt mondja, hogy Krishnát szeretni.
Okay, that's correct. But what does love of Krishna mean?
Jó, de mit jelent Krishnát szeretni?
So very often devotees get stumped over here.
Nagyon gyakran a bakták itt elakadnak.
Because love starts in its sort of bud form,
Mert a szeretet elkezdődik egy bimbó formájában,
at ecstatic devotion,
az extatikus odaadás,
and then it starts to blossom,
És
just like a
aztán
flower blossoms,
elkezd kinyílni, ahogy egy virág nyílik ki,
and into love.
szeretetté.
But there are different stages of love,
De a szeretetnek különböző szintjei vannak.
and different relationships with Krishna have corresponding stages of love that one attains.
És különböző szintű szeretetek vannak, amiket Krishnával kapcsolatban el lehet érni.
Then Lord Chaitanya talks about the 5 divisions of love,
Aztán az Úr Chaitanya a szeretet 5 felosztásáról beszél,
and then especially he talks about the conjugal mellow.
aztán pedig a szerelmi ízről van szó.
And that conjugal mellow is divided into 2,
Ennek 2 része van,
called Swakiya and Parakiya, which is wedded and unwedded love.
a házas és a házasságon kívüli szerelem,
Well, I'm just reading over one chapter that I did, which describes the 360 different types of heroines.
Olvasok át egy fejezetet, amit írtam, ami a 360 féle hősnőről szól.
That's very interesting. When you look up heroine in the dictionary,
Nagyon érdekes, hogyha megnézed ezt a hősnő szót a szótárban.
it says that it's a drug. It's an extract of what's it an extract from?
Minek a kivonata? Azt mondják, hogy ez egy kivonat.
Morphine, yeah, and morphine comes from coke.
Morfiumnak.
So, not that type of heroin. You write it the same way.
Tehát nem erről a heroinról van szó,
But 360 type of ladies' dispositions, put it that way.
hanem 360 féle női hozzáállásról.
Boy is the counting complex.
Hú, de bonyolult a számolás.
Anyway, when you come to it, then you'll see.
Majd ha olvassátok, meglátjátok.
So there's also a description of 64 transcendental qualities of Krishna and 25 qualities of Srimati Radharani.
Aztán beszél Krishna 64 transzcendentális tulajdonságáról, és Srimati Radharani 25
What's
tulajdonságáról.
the eligibility for someone to actually enter into these mellows of devotion?
Mi a képesítése valakinek, hogy az odaadásnak ezt a szintjét, erre a szintjére lépjen?
And then Lord concludes by giving a description of Goloka Vrindavan.
Aztán az Úr Goloka Vrindavanról ad egy leírást.
And then interestingly, Lord Chaitanya just takes a little detour.
Aztán egy kis kerülőutat tesz az Úr
And he
Chaitanya,
talks about the Kesha avatar,
és a Késha avatárról
or
beszél,
the hair incarnation.
vagy a haj inkarnációról.
Because there's one statement in Shastra, then Krishna and Balaram appeared from a black and white hair from Vishnu's chest.
Mert van egy ilyen kijelentés a Szentírásokban, hogy Krishna és Balarám a Vishnu mellkasán lévő fekete és fehér hajticsből, vagy szőrszálból jelent meg.
Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, he describes that in great detail.
Rupa Goswami a Laghu Bhagavatamritában erről részletesen ír.
And then he placed his hand on Sanatana Goswami's head.
És aztán a kezét Sanatana Goswami fejére helyezte.
So we jump 90 pages.
Most ugrunk 90 oldalt.
And after the conclusion of some teachings, then Sanatana Goswami speaks.
És a bizonyos tanítások után Sanatana Goswami beszél.
We're doing very good time-wise.
Nagyon jól állunk az idővel.
My dear Lord, I'm very low-born person. This is text 120, chapter 23.
Ez a 23. fejezet 120. verse.
My dear Lord, I'm very low-born person. Indeed, I'm a servant to low-born people. Therefore, I'm very, very downtrodden. Nonetheless, you have taught me conclusions unknown even to Lord Brahma. The conclusions that you have told me are an ocean of ambrosia of truth. My mind is unable to approach even a drop of that ocean. If you want to make a lame man like me dance, kindly bestow your transcendental blessings by placing your lotus feet on my head. So Sanatana Goswami says, I can't really fully follow everything that you said.
Sanatana Goswami azt mondja, hogy nem tudtam mindent igazából követni, amit mondtál.
But if you want to, then want me to understand, please put your lotus foot on my head.
Ha akarod, hogy megértsem, akkor tedd a lótuszlábad a fejemre.
So please say, whatever I've instructed, all be fully manifest unto you. By blessing me in this way, you will give me strength to describe all this. So if you want me to describe what you told me, then say that, all right, let everything be manifest unto you.
Hogyha akarod, hogy tudjak beszélni mindenről, amit hallottam tőled, akkor mondd ezt, hogy mindenről tudjak beszélni, amit elmondtam
Sri
neked.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then placed his hand on Sanatana Goswami's head and blessed him, saying, let all these instructions be manifest to you. So Lord Chaitanya said what Sanatana Goswami wanted him to say,
Tehát az Úr Chaitanya mondta, amit Sanatana Goswami akart, hogy mondjon,
but he wouldn't put his foot on his head.
de nem tette a lábát a fejére.
He put his foot on others' heads, but he wouldn't do it to Sanatana Goswami.
Másoknak a fejére tette a lábát, de Sanatana Goswaminak
He
nem.
just touched his head.
Csak megérintette.
He thought that Sanatana Goswami was too senior for him to do that.
Azt gondolta, hogy Sanatana Goswami az ő fejebb valója ahhoz, hogy ezt tegye vele.
So he says, thus I briefly discussed a discussion of the ultimate goal of life, love of Godhead. The mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cannot be described expansively. Whoever hears these instructions given to Sanatana Goswami by the Lord comes very soon to realize love of God, Krishna. Kaviraj Goswami gives a lot of blessings.
Kaviraj Goswami nagyon sok áldást ad
And connected with reading Chaitanya Charitamrita.
a Chaitanya Charitamrita olvasásával kapcsolatban.
So, just like here, he says you'll get love of God just by reading this instructions.
Mint itt azt mondja, hogy elnyerheti valaki az Isten szeretetet, hogy olvassa ezeket a tanításokat.
So we shouldn't lose that opportunity.
Ne vesztegessük el ezt a lehetőséget.
Okay, now we're on chapter 24.
Most a 24. fejezet jön.
61 explanations of the Atmarama verse.
Az Átmaráma vers 61 magyarázata.
And we are not going to go through the 61 explanations.
És ezt nem fogjuk végigvenni.
But Sanatana Goswami had heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had explained the Atmarama verse to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya.
De Sanatana Goswami hallotta, hogy Chaitanya Mahaprabhu elmagyarázta az Átmaráma verset Sarvabhauma Bhattacharjának,
So he asked him, please tell me.
és kérte, hogy mondd el nekem.
So yes, come in. Come. Hare Krishna. Please, welcome. This Atmarama verse is verse 10 in the 7th chapter.
Ez az Átmaráma vers, a 7. fejezet 10. verse.
And obviously very important verse because this keeps coming up all the time.
Nyilvánvalóan egy nagyon fontos vers, mert újra és újra előkerül.
Because it points to the fact that ultimately anyone who's anyone in spiritual life must come to worship Krishna.
És azt a tényt hangsúlyozza, hogy mindenkinek a lelki életben való fejlődéshez Krishnát kell imádnia.
Otherwise they're wasting their time.
Máskülönben csak pazarolják az idejüket.
There's not many paths leading to the same goal.
Nincs sok út, ami ugyanahoz a célhoz vezet.
Bhakti yoga that leads to Krishna.
A bhakti yoga vezet Krishnához,
Krishna is the only goal.
és Krishna az egyetlen cél.
So now Lord Chaitanya describes it in 61 ways.
Most az Úr Chaitanya 61 féleképpen beszél
By
róla.
analyzing the different words.
Elemzi a különböző szavakat.
You need a bit of a grasp of Sanskrit.
Kell valamennyire ismerni a
You
szanszkritot.
have to be very meticulous, really carefully follow what the Lord's doing.
Nagyon figyelmesen kell olvasni, hogy miről is
I've
beszél
never
az
done
Úr.
that, really.
Én ezt még sosem csináltam így végig.
It's something that is very attractive, but I've never really done that.
Nagyon vonzó, de sose csináltam ezt meg.
And at the conclusion, Lord Chaitanya gives the story about Magrari.
És a végén az Úr Chaitanya Brigári történetéről beszél.
Magrari the hunter.
Brigáriról, a vadászról.
And following that, Lord Chaitanya gets into the explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam, importance of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Aztán Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a Srimad Bhagavatam fontosságáról beszél.
And in this chapter, at the end of the next chapter, this is repeated. Lord Chaitanya is repeating this in different ways, repeating the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing and knowing Srimad Bhagavatam.
És itt és a következő fejezet végén az Úr Chaitanya ismétli a Srimad Bhagavatam fontosságát, a Srimad Bhagavatam hallásának és ismeretének fontosságát.
Okay, we jump from 289, 200 verses to 473, which is Madhya Lila chapter 24, and we're on verse 315.
Tehát most ugrunk a Madhya Lila 24. fejezet 315. versére.
Sanatana Goswami said, "My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. All the Vedic literatures are vibrated through your breathing. You are the original speaker of the Bhagavatam. You therefore know its real import. But for you, no one can understand the confidential meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Why are you glorifying me? Personally, you should understand the transcendental position of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why did you consider this important point?" So Lord Chaitanya says, why are you glorifying me? I'm just telling you what's in the Bhagavatam.
Az Úr Chaitanya azt mondja, hogy miért engem dicsőítesz, én csak arról beszélek, hogy mi van a Bhagavatamban.
So you should glorify the Bhagavatam.
A Bhagavatamot dicsőíts.
Srimad Bhagavatam is as great as Krishna, the supreme Lord and shelter of everything. Just what Chaitanya said, as great as Krishna. In each and every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam and in each and every syllable, there are various meanings. So when we're distributing Srimad Bhagavatam, we are giving Krishna to the people.
Amikor a Srimad Bhagavatamot osztjuk, akkor Krishnát adjuk az embereknek.
The form of Srimad Bhagavatam is given in questions and answers, thus the conclusion is established. By hearing these questions and answers, one is highly astonished. And then he quotes verses. Bruhi Yogeshwara Krishne Brahmanye Dharma Varmani Swayam Kastam Adunopete Dharma Kam Sharanam Gata. Now that Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us by whom religious principles are protected. The structure of Srimad Bhagavatam is very conducive to being understood.
Srimad Bhagavatamnak olyan a struktúrája, hogy nagyon kedvez annak, hogy meg tudjuk érteni.
It's a commentary on Vedanta Sutra.
A Vedanta Sutra magyarázata.
So I mean, usually a commentary is more complex than what it's explaining.
Általában a magyarázat az bonyolultabb, mint amit magyaráz.
So it's just reams and reams of philosophy.
Hosszan szól filozófiáról.
And Vedanta Sutra is already above everybody's head.
És a Vedanta Sutra már eleve mindenkinek magas.
But here, Srila Vyasadeva did just the opposite. He made it very easy.
De itt Srila Vyasadeva épp a fordítottját csinálta, hogy nagyon könnyűvé tette. Kérdések és válaszok vannak, ez az egyik.
Different pastimes.
Különböző ketterések vannak.
Which illustrate the truths of the Bhagavatam.
Amelyek illusztrálják a Bhagavatam igazságait.
And very explicit statements.
És nagyon egyértelmű kijelentések vannak.
Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. You can't misinterpret it.
Nem lehet félremagyarázni.
So Vedic literature is very often indirect.
A védikus szentírás nagyon gyakran közvetett.
But Bhagavatam is direct.
De a Bhagavatam közvetlen.
So these things make Bhagavatam extremely attractive.
Ezektől a dolgoktól a Bhagavatam nagyon vonzó.
Krishna swadharma bhagate dharma gyana ravisaha kalona stadrisham mesha puranarko dunodikaha. Who knows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. After Lord Krishna departs for his abode along with religious principles and transcendental knowledge, this Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, has arisen like the sun in this age of Kali to enlighten those who have no spiritual vision. In this way, like a madman, I have explained the meaning of just one verse. I do not know who will take this as evidence. If one becomes a madman like me, he may also understand the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam by this process. Lord Chaitanya does this often.
Az Úr Chaitanya ezt gyakran csinálja.
Sometimes when he just starts talking, he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just got carried away, I'm a madman.
Néha elkezd beszélni, és azt mondja, hogy jó, elnézést, így én egy őrült vagyok, és így elsodródtak a
And if
gondolataim.
someone's a madman like me, then they can also understand.
De hogyha valaki ugyanúgy őrült, mint ahogy én vagyok, az meg tud érteni.
Folding his hands, Sanatana Goswami says, My Lord, you ordered me to write a directory about the activities of Vaishnavas. I'm a most low-born person and have no knowledge of good behavior. How is it possible for me to write authorized directions about Vaishnava activities? Sanatana Goswami then requested the Lord, please personally tell me how I can write this difficult book about Vaishnava behavior. Please manifest yourself in my heart. If you would please manifest yourself within my heart and personally direct me in writing this book, then although I am low-born, I may hope to be able to write it. You can do this because you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead yourself, and whatever you direct is perfect. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, whatever you want to do, you will be able to do correctly by Lord Krishna's favor. You will manifest the real purport. Because you asked me for a synopsis, please hear these few indications. In the beginning, describe how one must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, and then there's a description or outline of Hari Bhakti Vilas.
És aztán a Hari Bhakti Vilas vázlatát olvashatjuk.
And Hari Bhakti Vilas is important in the sense that it is a book that includes Vaishnava Sadachara.
A Hari Bhakti Vilas egy fontos könyv, mert a Vaishnava szadácsáról szól.
Some of it also relates to sort of materialistic Vaishnavas.
Egy része a materialisztikus Vaisnavákról szól.
And it's not so relevant to pure devotees.
Nem annyira érvényes a tiszta bakták részére.
Other things are.
De a többi dolog az igen.
And it's very Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, she used to give a course on Vaishnava etiquette, which was more or less all from Hari Bhakti Vilas.
Bhakti Charu Swami szokott tartani egy szemináriumot a Vaishnava etikettről, ami főleg a Hari Bhakti Vilason alapul.
I have thus given a synopsis of the Vaishnava. This is 345.
Ez a 335.
Thus given a synopsis of the Vaishnava regulative principles. I have given this in brief, just to give you a little direction.
Bocsánat, 345.
When you write on this subject, Krishna will help you by spiritually awakening you. It's an interesting thing that you write on a topic, then Krishna starts giving Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikave, starts giving guidance from within.
Érdekes, hogy elkezdesz írni egy témáról, és akkor Krishna belülről elkezd vezetni.
Thus I have narrated Lord Chaitanya's mercy upon Sanatana Goswami. When one hears these topics, one's heart will be cleansed of all contamination. The authorized poet Kavi Karnapur has written a book named Chaitanya Chandradoya Nataka. This book tells how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed Sanatana Goswami with his specific mercy. Here are just some verses. These are specific glorifications of Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami.
Itt van néhány vers, ami dicsőíti Sanatana Goswamit és Rupa Goswamit.
I won't read the Sanskrit.
Nem olvasom a szanszkritot.
Except for one. As soon as Sanatana Goswami arrived, as soon as Sanatana Goswami arrived in front of Lord Chaitanya, the Lord, seeing him, became merciful to him. The Lord, who has the complexion of a golden champaka flower, opened his arms and embraced him while expressing great affection. So we read that.
Ezt olvastuk.
Then here's a nice verse, which is good to know.
Itt van egy szép vers, amit jó ismerni.
Kalena Vrindavana Keli Vartra Luptetitam Kya Paitum Vishishya Kripam Ritena Vishishecha Devas Tatraiva Rupam Chasanatanam Cha. Kavi Karnapur is like a real scholar.
Kavi Karnapur egy igazi költő.
In the course of time, the transcendental news of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan was almost lost. To enunciate explicitly those transcendental pastimes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu empowered Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami with the nectar of his mercy to carry out this work in Vrindavan. Someone has Fisherman's Friends? Thank you. Yeah, I started reading this book of Kavi Karnapur, Alankar Kaustubha.
Elkezdtem olvasni ezt a könyvet Kavi Karnapurtól, az Alankára Kaustubát.
I got past the introduction.
Túljutottam a bevezetésen,
And I got stuck on the first verse.
és aztán az első versnél elakadtam.
This is like a whole different. This is Sanskrit, and not just Sanskrit, but an Alankar, which is translated as
Decorations.
Huh?
Decorations.
Yeah, linguistic ornamentation, alliteration, and so on.
Tehát itt nem csak szanszkritul kell hozzá tudni, de ilyen költői eszközöket is kell ismerni, mint az alliteráció, nyelvi
I have
díszek.
thus explained the mercy bestowed on Sanatana Goswami by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If one hears this description, all moroseness in his heart will diminish. So if you're feeling morose,
Hogyha mogorvának érzed magad,
then read the description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings to Sanatana.
akkor olvasd Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tanításait Sanatana Goswaminak.
By reading these instructions to Sanatana Goswami, one will become fully aware of Krishna's various expansions and the process of devotional service, according to the regulative principles and spontaneous love. Thus everything can be fully known. By reading these instructions, a pure devotee can understand love of Krishna, the mellows of devotional service, and the conclusion of devotional service. Everyone can understand all these things to their ultimate end by studying these instructions. The conclusions of these instructions can be known to one whose life and soul is the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Prabhu. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. We're not finished.
Még nincs vége.
Hang on, we just have chapter 25.
Még van a 25. fejezet.
The teachings to Sanatana Goswami are concluded.
Itt véget értek a Sanatana Goswaminak szóló tanítások.
Sanatana Goswami is blessed, and everyone who reads those teachings, they're also blessed.
És Sanatana Goswami áldott lett, és aki olvassa ezeket a tanításokat, az szintén áldott lesz.
So, back in Adi Lila chapter 7,
Ha visszamegyünk az Ádi Lila 7.
there's
fejezethez,
this whole discussion between Prakashananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
ott van egy beszélgetés Prakashananda és Chaitanya Mahaprabhu között.
Now, why Kaviraj Goswami put it there?
Hogy miért tette oda Kaviraj Goswami?
No, it sort of is included in the philosophical aspect of Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Nem tudom, a Chaitanya Charitamrita filozófiai aspektusához tartozik.
Those first 5 chapters especially are like, and then 6 and 7 also are really, you know, it's all heavy duty philosophy.
Főleg az első 5 fejezet, és aztán a 6. és a 7. is mind mély filozófia.
But chronologically it falls here.
De kronológiailag ide tartozik.
So that pastime took place at this time.
Tehát az a kettelés itt ekkor történt.
And from that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very famous.
És ekkortól Chaitanya Mahaprabhu nagyon híressé
Many
vált.
people became his followers,
Sokan a követői lettek,
and Prakashananda's disciples also became his followers.
és Prakashananda tanítványai is a követői lettek.
So one day after that, Lord Chaitanya went to bathe at one of the ghats.
Egy nap Chaitanya Mahaprabhu elment megfürdeni az egyik gátnál.
Who's been to Varanasi?
Ki volt Varanasiban?
We just went past it in 96.
96-ban csak elmentünk mellette.
The train
A
stopped
vonat
at Varanasi.
megállt Varanasiban.
But it's considered to be, and Prabhupada also says, one of the oldest cities in the world.
De a világ egyik legrégebbi városának tekintik,
It
Prabhupád
really
mondja.
goes back to previous ages.
Előző korokra visszamegy,
And there's many beautiful ghats along the
és
river.
sok gyönyörű gát van a
So Lord
folyóparton.
Chaitanya went to take bath, and afterwards he and his devotees were chanting Hare Krishna in front of the temple of Bindu Madhava.
És akkor az Úr Chaitanya ment fürdeni, és ő és a bakták énekelték a Hare Krishnát a Bindu Madhava templom előtt.
Now this is that picture over there,
Ez az a kép, ami ott van.
the middle picture, and that's the temple of Bindu Madhava.
Középső kép az a Bindu Madhava templom,
And Lord Chaitanya and his devotees were chanting, and Prakashananda and all his followers, they all joined.
és az Úr Chaitanya és a bakták mind táncoltak, és Prakashananda és az ő követői is csatlakoztak.
And Prakashananda apologized to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
És Prakashananda bocsánatot kért Chaitanya Mahaprabhutól.
He apologized for his past behavior.
Bocsánatot kért a korábbi viselkedése miatt.
Now in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Lord Chaitanya is still in Navadvip,
A Chaitanya Bhagavatában az Úr Chaitanya még Navadvipben van,
and he talks about Prakashananda, and he says that I made him a leper, and still he criticizes me.
és beszél Prakashanandáról, és azt mondja, hogy leprásá tettem, és még mindig kritizál engem.
Kaviraj Goswami doesn't say that about Prakashananda.
Kaviraj Goswami ezt nem említi Prakashanandáról.
And he asks about, please explain what the conclusion of Vedanta Sutra is.
És kéri, hogy magyarázza el a Vedanta Sutra konklúzióját.
And now that's where there's some verses to read.
Itt van egy pár vers, amit elolvasunk.
My dear Lord, whatever direct meaning you have given when explaining the Brahma Sutra, Lord Chaitanya explained to them. What is the meaning of Vedanta Sutra?
What's the number?
It's certainly very wonderful to all of us. Oh, sorry.
31. vers.
89, chapter 25, verse 89.
25. fejezet 89-es vers.
90. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore you have inconceivable energies. I wish to hear from you briefly about the Brahma Sutra. Okay, please explain that to me. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, I'm an ordinary living being, and therefore my knowledge is very insignificant. However, the meaning of Brahma Sutra is very grave because its author Vyasadeva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. The purport of Vedanta Sutra is very difficult for an ordinary person to understand, but Vyasadeva, out of his causeless mercy, has personally explained the meaning. If the Vedanta Sutra is explained by Vyasadeva himself, who has written it, its original meaning can be understood by the people in general. The meaning of the sound vibration Omkar is present in the Gayatri Mantra. The same is elaborately explained in the 4 shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Chatushloki. Whatever was spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to Lord Brahma in those 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam was also explained to Narad by Lord Brahma. Now, this is the sort of a sequence of Srimad Bhagavatam, that everything starts with Omkar.
Így épül fel a Srimad Bhagavatam, hogy minden az Omkárával kezdődik.
From Omkar manifests the Gayatri Mantra.
Az Omkárából megnyilvánul a Gayatri Mantra.
Now we're talking about Om Bhur Bhuvar Swaha Tat, like that.
Most erről beszélünk.
And what does that mantra mean?
Mit jelent ez a mantra?
It's explained in the 4 verses of the Chatushloki of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Ezt magyarázza a Srimad Bhagavatam Chatushloki 4 verse.
Originally, Srimad Bhagavatam is these 4 verses.
Eredetileg a Srimad Bhagavatam ez a 4 vers.
So those 4 verses were spoken by the Lord to Brahma.
Ezt a 4 verset mondja el az Úr Brahmának.
Narada repeated it, Brahma repeated it to Narad.
Brahma elismételte Náradának.
Narada repeated it to Vyasadeva.
Nárada elismételte Vyasadévának.
Now Vyasadeva expanded them.
És aztán Vyasadév volt az, aki kibővítette.
This is from 4 shlokas, you get 18,000 shlokas.
És így lett a 4 versből 18 000 vers.
Srila Vyasadeva considered that whatever he had received from Narada Muni as an explanation of Omkar, he would elaborately explain in his book Srimad Bhagavatam as a commentary on the Brahma Sutra. Vyasadeva collected whatever Vedic conclusions were in the 4 Vedas and 108 Upanishads and placed them in the aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra. In the Vedanta Sutra, the purport of all Vedic knowledge is explained. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, the same purport has been explained in 18,000 verses. Therefore, it is to be concluded that the Brahma Sutra is explained vividly in Srimad Bhagavatam. Also, what is explained in the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam has the same purport as what is explained in the Upanishads. So, I mean, we're aware of the tradition of commentaries.
Tudatosak vagyunk a magyarázó hagyományról.
That acharyas give commentaries on books.
Az ácsáryák magyarázatokat fűztek a könyvekhez.
Interestingly, up to the time of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, there's no commentary on the Bhagavatam.
És érdekes módon Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakurig nincsen magyarázat a Srimad Bhagavatamhoz. Nincs Vaisnava magyarázat.
There was Sridhar Maharaj.
Volt Sridhar Maharaj
Originally.
Eredetileg.
And then, aside from that, there was actually nothing in the line of Gaudiya Vaishnava.
És aztán azon kívül nem volt semmi a Gaudiya Vaisnavák részéről.
So Sridhar Swami is before.
Sridhar Swami korábbi.
So in Gaudiya Vaishnava line, 250 years have gone by. Why is there no parampara? But why is there no parampara description of the Bhagavatam?
Ugye az Úr Chaitanyától eltelik 250 év Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakurig, és hogy ez idő alatt miért nem volt magyarázat a Srimad Bhagavatamhoz.
And the answer is that, well, devotees never felt it was necessary.
És a válasz az, hogy a bakták sosem érezték ennek szükségét.
Because the author of Vedanta Sutra has given his own commentary.
Mert a Vedanta Sutra szerzője adta a saját magyarázatát.
So who better knows the meaning of Vedanta Sutra than Vyasadeva?
Ki értené jobban a Vedanta Sutra jelentését, mint Vyasadeva?
So if he's already given that commentary, then it's no need for anyone else.
Hogyha már ő adta ezt a magyarázatot, akkor nincs szükség arra, hogy más is írjon.
But then on Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's request, Baladev Vidyabhushan did a comment.
De aztán Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur kérésére Baladev Vidyabhushan írt egy magyarázatot a Govinda Bhashyán.
And yeah. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things for himself that are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Familiar?
Ismerős?
So, the Ishopanishad, it shows how Srimad Bhagavatam actually contains everything that's in Vedanta Sutra and Upanishad.
Az Ishopanishad megmutatja, hogy a Srimad Bhagavatamban minden benne van a Vedanta Sutrából és az Upanishadokból.
The first line is different.
Az első sor más.
Atma vasyam idam vishvam. But then after that, yat kinchat jagatyam jagat tena chaktena bunjitaha magridha kasya svedanam. It's all the same.
De aztán ugyanaz.
Radharani, menj el onnét, annyi hely van. The essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, our relationship with the Supreme Lord, our activities in that connection, and the goal of life is manifest in the full verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Chatu Shloki. Everything is explained in those verses. Something went out? Okay. We'll continue. Folytatódik? Okay. Lord Chaitanya gives an explanation of Chatushloki.
Az Úr Chaitanya elmagyarázza a Chatushloki-t.
Very worthy thing to study.
Nagyon megéri tanulmányozni.
This is the essence of the Bhagavatam.
Ez a Bhagavatam lényege.
So if you want to know the essence of the Bhagavatam, those 4 verses, Lord Chaitanya explains it.
Hogyha akarod érteni, hogy mi a Bhagavatam lényege, az Úr Chaitanya elmagyarázza.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Prakashananda Saraswati to study Srimad Bhagavatam very scrutinizingly. Then you will actually understand the meaning of Brahma Sutra. Sorry, this is 153.
Ez most a 153. vers.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, always discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and constantly chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. In this way, you will be able to attain liberation very easily, and you will be elevated to the enjoyment of love of God. So that was his explanation to the Mayavadis.
Ez volt az ő magyarázata a Májavádiknak.
Then the Maharashtra Brahman talked about mentioned the 61 explanations of the Atmarama verse.
Aztán a Maharashtra Brahmana említette az Atmarama vers 61 féle magyarázatát.
Everyone said, "Oh, please let's hear it. Please let's."
Akkor mindenki mondta, hogy hadd halljuk, hadd halljuk.
So this was entertainment in those days, if you can call it that.
Ez volt a szórakozás akkoriban, ha nevezhetjük így.
People engaged themselves with.
Ezzel foglalták le magukat az
They
emberek.
wanted to hear interesting discussions about philosophy, about Krishna.
Akartak hallani érdekes beszélgetéseket filozófiáról, Krishnáról.
So then after Lord Chaitanya left.
Aztán az Úr Chaitanya elment.
All the this is 165.
Most a 165. vers.
All the inhabitants of Kashi began chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in ecstatic love. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they cried, sometimes they chanted, and sometimes they danced. After this, all the Mayavadi sannyasis and learned scholars began discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then returned to his residence with his personal associates. Thus he turned the whole city of Varanasi into another Navadvip. Among his own associates, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu laughingly said, I came here to sell my emotional, ecstatic love. Although I came to Varanasi to sell my goods, there was no customers, and it appeared necessary for me to carry them back to my own country. All of you were feeling unhappy that no one was purchasing my goods, and that I would have to carry them away. Therefore, by your will only, I have distributed them without charging. So Lord Chaitanya said, I've given, usually I charge for love of God, people have to be qualified, now I've given it freely.
Jó, Chaitanya mondja, hogy általában kérek fizetséget az Isten szeretetért, képesítettnek kell lenni rá, de most ingyen osztottam.
All the devotees then said, you have incarnated to deliver the fallen souls, you have delivered them in the east and in the south, and now you are delivering them in the west. Lord Chaitanya's travels.
Az Úr Chaitanya utazásai.
Only Varanasi was left, because the people there were against your missionary activities. Now you have delivered them, and we are all very happy. Varanasi was it was a university town.
Varanasi egy egyetemváros volt.
And but it was inhabited by Mayavadis.
De Májavádik lakták.
After the news of these events was broadcast, everyone from the surrounding neighborhoods began to pour in to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hundreds of thousands of people came to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There was no counting the number. Because the Lord's residence was very small, not everyone could see him. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to take his bath in the Ganges and to see the temple of Vishveshvara, people would line up on both sides to see the Lord. It's interesting that Lord Chaitanya is, he's staying at the residence of Chandrasekhar.
Érdekes, hogy az Úr Chaitanya Chandrasekhar házában volt,
Grihasta,
aki egy grihaszta,
probably has children as well,
valószínűleg voltak gyerekei is,
and the place is small.
és kicsi a hely.
Chaitanya is just living under very humble conditions.
Az Úr Chaitanya nagyon szerény körülmények között élt.
When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to take his bath in the Ganges and to see this temple of Vishveshwara, people would line up on both sides to see the Lord. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passed by the people, he would raise his arms and say, "Please chant Krishna, please chant Hari." All the people received him by chanting Hare Krishna, and they offered their respects to him by this chanting. In this way, for 5 days, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered the people of Varanasi. Finally, on the next day, he became very eager to leave. After rising very early on the 6th day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started to leave, and 5 devotees began to follow him. These 5 were Tapan Mishra Raghunath, which is Raghunath Bhatta, Tapan Mishra's son, the Maharashtriya Brahmana, Chandrasekhar, and Paramananda Kirtaniya. Who I don't know who he is. He's first mentioned.
Akit nem tudom, hogy kicsoda, most van először említve.
These 5 wanted to accompany Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Jagannath Puri, but the Lord attentively bade them farewell. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "If you want to see me, you may come later, but for the time being I shall go alone through the Jarikanda forest." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Sanatana Goswami to proceed towards Vrindavan, and informed him that his 2 brothers had already gone there. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami, "All my devotees who go to Vrindavan are generally very poor. They each have nothing with them but a torn quilt and a small water pot. Therefore, Sanatana, you should give them shelter and maintain them." So that was one of the additional instructions Sanatana Goswami received.
Ez egy extra utasítás volt, amit Sanatana Goswami kapott.
The devotees who came to Vrindavan, that Sanatana Goswami would take care of them.
Hogy gondoskodjon a Vrindavanba érkező baktákról.
After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced them all and began to proceed on his way, and they all fainted and fell down. After some time, all the devotees got up and returned to their homes very much grief-stricken. Sanatana Goswami proceeded towards Vrindavan alone. When Rupa Goswami reached Mathura, he met Subhuti Roy on the banks of the Jamuna at a place called Dhruvagat. So there's a story here of Subhuti Roy.
Itt van egy történet Subhuti Royról.
And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just continued those. Yeah. After staying in Varanasi for about 10 days, this is 222.
222. vers.
As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was returning to Jagannath Puri, he passed through the solitary forest and received great pleasure in doing so. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happily returned to Jagannath Puri in the company of his servant Balabhadra Bhattacharya. As previously, the Lord performed many pleasing pastimes with the forest animals. I can see. We read the details of that on his way there.
Ennek a részleteiről olvastuk, amikor arrafelé ment az Úr Chaitanya.
When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived at a place known as Ataranala near Jagannath Puri, he sent Balabhadra Bhattacharya to call for his devotees. This is, I mentioned before, it's a bridge, 18-pillar bridge that you cross over sort of a river or stream to get into Puri.
Említettem már, hogy ez egy híd, aminek 18 oszlopa van, amin keresztül kell menni ahhoz, hogy az ember Puriba jusson.
And all the devotees came to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were really overjoyed.
És a bakták jöttek mind találkozni Chaitanya Mahaprabhuval, mindenki nagyon boldog volt.
Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left Vrindavan mid-January.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu január közepén hagyta el Vrindavant.
Well, the walking distance is something else.
A gyalogút hossza az egy másik dolog.
But Vrindavan to Puri is like 1500 kilometers.
De Vrindavantól Puriig az olyan 1500 kilométer.
Reading on that in a minute.
Mindjárt mondjuk pontosan.
But he was, 2 weeks in Prayag.
De 2 hetet töltött Prajágban.
He was over 2 months. 1500. He was
1500.
over 2 months in Varanasi.
2 hónapot volt Varanasiban.
1500 kilometers, 20 kilometers a day.
1500 kilométer, 20 kilométer naponta.
2.5 months.
Ez 2,5 hónap.
3 months.
3 hónap.
So 3 months plus 2 months.
3 hónap plusz 2 hónap.
Another month is 6 months.
Még egy hónap, az már 6 hónap.
Anyway, from mid-January to now is mid-July.
Szóval január közepétől ez most a július közepe lehet.
So he's arriving in time for Rath Yatra.
Időben érkezik meg a Ratha Játrához.
And all the devotees are in bliss.
És a bakták mind nagyon boldogok.
Big kirtan.
Nagy kirtan van.
And when Lord Chaitanya would come, then they would arrange for big prasadam distribution.
És amikor jött az Úr Chaitanya, akkor megszervezték, hogy legyen nagy praszádamosztás.
And Lord Chaitanya would talk about his travels.
És az Úr Chaitanya beszámolt az utazásáról.
What happened?
Kérdezték, hogy mesélj, mi történt?
He left in October, now he's back in July, so he's gone for 9 months.
Elment októberbe, és visszajött júliusban, 9 hónapig nem volt ott. Mindenki nagyon izgatott, akarnak hallani róla.
Now there's some very beautiful things over here, which because it's so late at night, I'm not going to read.
Itt vannak nagyon gyönyörű dolgok, amiatt, hogy nagyon késő este van, nem fogok elolvasni.
It's 9:30 at night over here, our time.
Itt most este 9:30 van nálunk.
And to deliver, I have not summarized the entire subject matter, and then he summarizes Madhya Lila also.
What number?
264.
Ez a 264.
And he says he summarized Madhya Lila.
Azt mondja, hogy már összefoglalta a Madhya Lilát.
To deliver all the fallen souls, the Lord traveled from country to country. He personally tasted the transcendental pleasure of devotional service, and he simultaneously spread the cult of devotion everywhere. Then there's many wonderful glories about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, which would be really lovely for devotees to read. But as I said,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kettelésének a dicsőségéről van szó, amit nagyon jó, hogyha a bakták elolvasnak. Nagyon 278. vers.
There's this beautiful verse.
Egy nagyon gyönyörű vers.
Men become strong and stout by eating sufficient grains, but the devotee who simply eats ordinary grains but does not taste the transcendental pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna gradually becomes weak and falls down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begins to bloom, and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance. And this is one of the purports where Prabhupada then says that he's written 4 verses, 4 books, and that devotees should read them, and if devotees in ISKCON don't, then this is what will happen to them. They will then fall down.
És ez az egyik magyarázat, ahol Prabhupád ír erről a 4 könyvről, amit írt, és hogy a bakták olvassák ezeket a könyveket, és hogyha az ISKCON bakták nem olvassák ezeket a könyveket, akkor le fognak esni.
279.
279.
The readers should relish this wonderful nectar because nothing compares to it. Keeping their faith firmly fixed within their minds, they should be careful not to fall into the pit of false arguments or the whirlpool of unfortunate situations. The pit of false arguments or the whirlpools of unfortunate situations.
A hamis érvek gödre, vagy a szerencsétlen helyzetek örvénye.
If one falls into such positions, he is finished. Taking the feet of Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, and Jiva Goswami on my head, I always desire their mercy. Thus I, Krishna Das, humbly tried to describe the nectar of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which are mixed with the pastimes of Lord Krishna. For the satisfaction of Srimadan Gopal and Govinda Dev, we pray that this book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, may be offered to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Chaitanya Charitamrita pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu constitute a very secret literature. It is the life and soul of all devotees. Those who are not fit to relish this literature, who are envious like hogs and pigs, will certainly not adore it. However, this will not harm my attempt. These pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will certainly please all saintly people who have clear hearts. They will certainly enjoy it. We wish that this will enhance their enjoyment more and more. Jai Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
It's very rare that an author talks so boldly about himself. It's nothing compared to this.
Nagyon ritka, hogy egy szerző ilyen vakmerően beszéljen saját magáról, hogy ehhez semmi sem hasonlítható.
So yes, that requires a certain empowerment.
Ehhez egy bizonyos fajta felhatalmazásra van szükség.
So anyway, thank you to all the devotees who've been sitting here for 2.5 hours.
Köszönet mindazoknak a baktáknak, akik itt ülnek 2,5 órája.
And thank you to everyone who's going to be seeing this tomorrow on Sunday or successive days.
És köszönet mindazoknak, akik ezt majd vasárnap látják, vagy a rákövetkező napokban.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has returned to Jagannath Puri.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visszatért Jagannath Puriba.
And now he will not travel.
És most már nem fog utazni.
He has completed this part of his mission.
Befejezte a missziójának ezt a részét.
He came to teach about pure devotional service.
Azért jött, hogy a tiszta odaadó szolgálatról tanítson,
To empower some of his devotees to revive the process of bhakti yoga.
hogy néhány baktáját felhatalmazza, hogy felélesszék a bhakti joga folyamatát,
Now for the and this was for 6 years.
és ez 6 évig tartott.
6 years this traveling took place.
6 évig utazott.
And now for the next 18 years, Lord Chaitanya is staying in Jagannath Puri, just tasting the nectar of Krishna.
És a következő 18 évet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu csak Jagannath Puriban tölti, megízlelve Krishna
And
nektárját.
we're so fortunate that we could also taste that nectar with him.
És mi annyira szerencsések vagyunk, hogy mi is tudjuk ízlelni ezt a nektárt vele együtt.
The taste of Krishna's lips.
Krishna ajkainak nektárját,
Aroma of Krishna's body.
Krishna testének illatát,
The beauty of Krishna's form.
Krishna formájának
Sound
szépségét,
of Krishna's voice and flute.
Krishna hangjának és fuvalájának a hangját.
All of these things, which are really the esoteric teachings of Gayatri mantras, are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Mindezek a dolgok, amik a Gayatri mantrák ezoterikus jelentéseire vannak írva a Chaitanya Charitamritában.
So, as Kaviraj Goswami says, dear devotees, please read Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Ahogy Kaviraj Goswami mondja, hogy kedves bakták, légy szíves, olvassátok a Chaitanya Charitamritát.
Prabhupada said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to read it in his leisure time.
Prabhupád szokta mondani, hogy Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur szokta ezt olvasni a szabad idejében.
When Prabhupada was on the ship, that's what he was reading.
És amikor Prabhupád a hajón volt, akkor ezt olvasta.
Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Chaitanya Charitamritát.
Maybe he got to this point of Sanatana Goswami, and that's why he started giving the classes.
Lehet, hogy idáig jutott Sanatana Goswami, és azért kezdett erről tartani leckéket.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So look at our website. We'll let you know when something's happening.
Majd figyeljétek a weboldalunkat, tájékoztatni fogunk benneteket, hogyha történik valami.
Podcasts are going up daily.
A podcastok majd mennek naponta,
Almost daily.
ez majdnem minden nap.
And other videos, events, and so on. Keep in touch.
Más videókkal, eseményekkel kapcsolatban pedig maradjatok kapcsolatban.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.